The sweet sounds of the krell. The sweet sound of the krell. I need a cough button. I don't even smoke, and I do burn sage. That's probably what it is. Hey folks, how are you? Aaron Price, what's up, bro? Man, we need to get on a phone call. I'm the messaging thing has gotten so intense. I need to let me turn that down. Just a little background theme music. But yeah, Aaron Price, let's catch up, bro. How's everyone doing? Wow, 6 people here already. Usually, that doesn't happen till 10 minutes in. But just making sure my YouTube is working here. It's Monday. It's Monday, April 5th, and there's a lot going on. And I always want to make sure I've got the YouTube people, because there's often a question or two. Today I'm broadcasting from the music part of the studio rather than the TV station area, because there's a lot of music to talk about. There's a lot of music happening and a lot of music overlapping, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit. Sharif, what's up, dude? New Brunswick love. We do love New Brunswick. Aaron Price says, nice jacket. Thanks, bro. A gift from my other half. She said, let's get some jacket action going. But trying to be half professional. But yeah, folks, well, I'm going to get warmed up here. We got a cool show today. A couple news items to go over, a couple things. Always stuff in the news, always stuff on this journey. Always stuff to encourage people to just take one day and go meatless. You don't have to become macrobiotic overnight or get into, all organic diet or raw foods or some of these things that scare people away when they see juice fasting and, counting carbs and nutrients and stuff. Move this effects pedal here. That's the problem being on the on the music side. It's the music side. But the thing I want to encourage on this show every week, of course, is just the non-threatening kind of idea of just once a week, just kind of say, you know what? Let me give it a rest, man. The pork rolls and the chicken breast and the bacon and the, we know because we keep hearing stuff about some of these foods. Now, some of you are eating farm-raised, organic, drug-free lamb or grass-fed beef and different things like that. I commend that. I do. I do say that that's great. Many of you hear me say a lot that I'm a qualitarian. I want to encourage quality in what's out there. And so that's one thing. But unfortunately, 99% of where we're getting animal protein is from the military, not military industrial, although it's seemingly a branch of that, from the animal slaughter industrial giant operations, these factory farms. And we're going to talk a little bit today about these factory ships, right? I've brought it up a couple times. I still have not had time to watch this fish documentary. Documentary. I'm going to put a link right up because I've been reading about it. So I feel like, I'm experiencing it on some level, but it's it's great. It's been very popular, and it's of course controversial, quote unquote, with the the fishing industry, right? They've been pushing back hard. They've been calling it a hoax and everything from hoax to inaccurate to unfair to radical, all these things, well, you would expect that. So, I mean, it's tough to parse that one out. But the bottom line is, it's not the first time you've heard this. if you've been paying attention at all, I mean, I'm 56 years old. I probably heard that the oceans are being overfished when I was 16 or something, So this is not. That's what's funny as they push back. It's like guys, and gals. You notice when it's something horrible, we never strive to have gender equality, right? Isn't that? I'm going to do a whole show on that one day. If someone says, someone, anyway, we're not going to go down that road. But it's, let's be fair, right? When you say, someone's pushing back on nonsensical ideas, or pushing back with their nonsensical ideas, we got to say guys, which is kind of the vernacular. But we got to say folks, because lots of crazy women too, because we're all equal as human beings. So we should dial that in. What's her name? Marjorie, whatever, from Georgia. She flies the flag right there for putting a little gender equality in the insane men in the Senate and in the House. But it's folks like that, these pro-corporate elected officials, for instance. Some of them are pushing back on this. It's called what's it called? Seaspiracy. I always forget the name. Seaspiracy, like the word conspiracy, but SEA, like ocean in front of it. Seaspiracy. But you have a lot of these elected officials, men and women, pushing back, and because they are beholden to these big fishing conglomerates. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And see if my hot tea is... so let's see what... I always ask folks, how's the music, by the way? Is it too loud? Let me know, because I want to have a little Krell patch going while I'm on, at least in the beginning part. Let me know if the music is too loud. Can you hear the music? It might be muted, actually. I'm listening to a different mix. But what did I have for lunch? I had just a light lunch. I've been doing intermittent fasting, which means you stop eating at 8 p.m. Fail. Some nights I do, but often I don't, and I try to just eat fruit if it's later on. But yeah, I fell off the horse on that. But that's great though. When you pull that off and you stop eating at 8 p.m. and you don't eat again till noon, wow, man. The energy and the clarity, and you just feel so good. So I'm trying to get back to that. I eat really well, but I eat shitty hours, So started eating, afternoon today, but didn't have much. Just had we got these really nice vegan dumplings, these Thai veggie dumplings, and the soya makes, and those are cool. Had a couple of those. Had some tempeh, had some kale, had some broccoli. So just kept it, kind of green, kind of simple. Just some steamed broccoli, and the tempeh was done up with peanut sauce and stuff. So that was cool. Steve Hershey has shared his meal. So you're saying second week having one meal a day. Okay. Week one was falafel. Okay. Oh, so I misunderstood you last week. I thought you had a meatless week. I was like, wow, dude, that's a pretty big jump. But it makes sense now. You had a meatless day and then another one. So 2 weeks. Fantastic. Falafel. Psh, who can go wrong? I mean, it's one of my favorite foods. Wow. So simple, so basic, so easy, right? Because you can travel with it if you have a little water and you cook it in oil, but you could actually bake your falafel. You could wrap them in foil and put them in the fire, so you can make them camping or, if you're on the run. And so the falafel and a whole lot of different foods from the Middle East are, in fact, what they often have in common is they'll do well without refrigeration, like the raw materials. They are easy to make. They are nutrient dense, and they are largely plant-based. Yes, they eat animals. Yes, they eat eggs, and they use milk of various animals. But like any, not only older kind of cuisine culture, but also, parts of the world where there's a lot of economic challenge, you see right away that people are eating a lot more plant-based because you can afford it. So falafel, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, cabbages and riding the rails. But falafel, though, is fantastic food. So that's a great thing to get into your rotation. I will say vegetable sushi, that's great. That's redundant. Culturally, we use a lot of words are misused. Don't get me started. And misspelled, like voila, WALLA. You see that, and you see irregardless and all those kinds of things. But one word, sushi, it doesn't mean fish. Sushi means literally vinegared rice. That's what it means in Japanese. And rough translation. And so the rice that's used in the rolls and in the whole experience. But sashimi is the fish. So that's I'm assuming that's what you meant. You had a fish-free kind of a Japanese dish, but it's already fish-free if you say sushi. But like many words that are misused, we're never gonna roll that back, or it's gonna take a long time. But so I love sushi. I love cucumber rolls and avocado rolls, and been to Japan about 8 times. In fact, the anniversary of my first trip is coming right up. We went there 10 years ago when it was Fukushima had just happened. Heavy shit. I'm just looking here for some Japanese related pictures. So been there many times, and I've got the veg thing sussed out in Japan. I want to do a whole show on Japan. I've promised that in the past. There's 2 countries where it's a little challenging to be vegetarian, plant-based, vegan, whatever you like. And those are Spain and Japan. Yeah. You can do it. It's fine. But you got to get some chops going because... Anyway, long story there. But when I'm in Japan, I have this little folder on my phone, and I'm able to kind of communicate. I can say a few Japanese words, especially when I'm there and I'm practicing. But sometimes I need to show them that, or I can say some of these. Onegashimasu. And of course, arigato gozaimasu. Everyone knows that from movies and stuff. But yeah, you have little reminders. Arigato gozaimasu, gozaimashita. Ogen. I haven't been there in like 2 years, so pronunciation's horrible. Ogen suka. I don't know. I'm not going to butcher it, but you have your words. But then I have oniko nashi. And you point and because you're finding out. Oniko nashi. Arigato. Sakana nashi. So I have some of these memorized when you're there for like 10, 12 days. Yeah, shokubutsu no mi. Shokubutsu. Arigato. Shokubutsu. Shokubutsu is a big one because that's saying plants, plant-based. So you can point to something and just use human expression. Shokubutsu. Shokubutsu. Shokubutsu, shokohin. So they have, a rich culture of plant-based in Japan because of the Buddhism and the temples thousands of years ago. They were asking chefs and cooks to make make them plant-based foods. So anyway, so that's a little, just as always, I go off on topics when people bring stuff up. Let's see here. So I've got a great guest today, so I'm going to prep a little bit for that. He'll be on any minute now. This is a guy I've known for 42 years, and really good friend of mine, old friend of mine. And he's plant-based, person, which not every guest is, but he happens to be. And he, we grew up with rock and roll being, one of our common things. And he turned me on to a lot of bands and stuff. But he went on to be an author. He's written a couple rock and roll related books. He was managing editor at High Times and Screw magazine and Penthouse Forum. So he's a lot of wild stories through the years. You meet a lot of incredible people in all of those things. On the rock and roll side, he's met just about everyone you can imagine. And on the side of, what's the proper word to use today? Sex work, pornography, X-rated adult material, I mean, what's the I don't know. What's the proper non-triggering nomenclature? I don't know, but I'm open to all of them. But he's got some great stories, and on all the way through, dedicated to animal, being kind to animals and eating a plant-based diet and just progressive politics and being an activist for marijuana laws and all kinds of rights across the board. How's my little trying out my TV look just for fun, just for a little lighthearted moment here. Oh, that looks that looks ridiculous. I never saw it like on a monitor. That is really silly. And hey, the sillier the better. I kind of like the analog TV though. If one of these actually looks good enough, I'll do the whole show. But I mean, come on. Do you remember those TVs? That's a sign of our age, right? Remember coming home from grade school? You put that pot pie in the toaster oven and news, Sesame Street. I'm too old for that. And if you were lucky, there was a ABC afternoon movie. So all right, so I've set up my guest, and should I leave the TV up? Let's take a vote. Let me know. All right, we're gonna come back to that. Right now, though, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna bring onto the floor Mr. Eric Danville. And let's go back to the questions here. Can anyone hear music? I said the F word. Yes, I did. Which one? Nick says thumbs up on the TV. Okay, we have 2 votes for the TV. Do we have any cons questions here?
Okay.
Any cons?
Okay.
I like the TV. I agree.
Are we live now or what?
Hey, Eric, we are live. Yeah.
There we go.
You can say the F word.
Yeah, fuck. There you go. Got it out of my system now.
Well, I hope not, because
No.
we're only getting started.
It's never out of my system.
That's awesome. Let's go by popular demand. What's this one? Is this crosshairs? Oh, I like that. This is like I'm in a Air Force jet.
As you should be.
Well, something like that. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
You look like you're on TV now. It's a lovely.
We're doing a TV show. Let's bring you on video. um, click your video there on the bottom.
Uh, Start video.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome,
Okay.
ladies and
And can I
gentlemen.
record this? Let me.
Yes, let me fix that. Thanks for reminding me. See,
Yeah.
let's see. Bum, 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 bum. Let's do that. Folks, we're doing live production here. And you can record. Go ahead.
I'm recording, I think.
Awesome.
There you go.
So, good, man. How, you doing well, though?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Doing fine. I'm a little tired because I've been working so hard, but yeah, I'm good. I'm good. No COVID, no nothing. So
That's fantastic.
yeah. I
Now
got
we
that
can,
out of the way last year.
we can start there. You say you had it last year, right? Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I got it last year, last February, about a week after Alice Cooper's birthday. Since everything revolves around Alice Cooper's birthday,
There's a connection, man.
there's always a connection to Alice Cooper somewhere.
Let
I
me.
got it. I was in a situation where I had to be with a lot of people, and it was just starting out. And one of the guys who I had to be around for a long time, he lived up in New Rochelle, which turned out to be one of the hot spots for it. And I get home one day, leave on a Friday. I wake up on Saturday to go visit a friend. I meet her for a while. I get back to my apartment. My nose drips for a second. All of a sudden, I'm like out for like 5 days straight. When I finally saw the guy again, he was like, "Oh, how you doing?" I was like, "I just had the worst flu of my life for 5 days." He's like, "Yeah, so did I." And a couple of weeks later, we find out like, ain't no flu. It's the fucking COVID. So
Wow.
yeah, it was. Oh man, I was like praying to die. I get like really bad flu cases sometimes. I was praying to fucking die during that.
Praying to die.
Yeah, it
That's
was horrible.
that should be the. We've talked for years about doing a punk rock album. There's the title, "Praying to Die." But I wanted to interject before. Sorry, I interrupted you, and I wanted to say because you jokingly said Alice Cooper, who's of course his birthday is right
February 4th.
February, yeah, and I was going to say one of the things we should do for fun over this hang today is make up shit for QAnon people because I have a friend of mine and we just make up ridiculous shit and as a joke and it's like it's plausible, but we could make up some shit about Alice Cooper causing COVID in Arizona because of some and
You play his records backwards, you get COVID. How about that?
It's
the snake. The snake causes the COVID.
It's great. One of the things, the only difficulty today is to hit all the topics, my dear friend. And one of the things, obviously, we're getting to some political stuff, but on the QAnon thing, before we jump back to a little more other stuff, I think it was, I forget who, maybe Trevor Noah, a brilliant point someone made that.
QAnons are idiots.
Well, the QAnon, they were talking about this Matt Gaetz thing, right? This guy.
Oh yeah. I'm loving that.
I know, but check this out, and this goes out, folks. Anyone out there, let's go viral on this. Tell all of your jerk friends who believe any of this. This is a good one because Trevor Noah, I believe it was, pointed out. Where are the QAnon people on this? This is like their shit.
I know.
Child trafficking. It's their thing.
Oh, absolutely.
This is one of their guys. Yeah. So there's nothing.
Jim Jordan is another one of their guys.
Unbelievable. And it's comedy because it's like you guys should be all over this. This is your jam.
Absolutely. It's the typical well-known fascist ploy of accuse your opponent of what you are guilty of.
Crickets. So I thought it was a brilliant observation because what a mess that guy is, So all right, so we'll jump away from politics for now. As we both know, it's all politics. I wanted to start out though and let people know who you are and give a little background. And so first I'll say Eric is an author. He's a musicologist. He's an activist. He's an environmentalist, and he's been plant-based for decades. But I know him. I met him.
A pornographer too.
And he's a pornographer. Yes, he's a pornographer, and an expert in all of the above topics. And I met him at age 14, when I was listening to Aerosmith and Boston, and I listened to a couple cool things. I knew who Alice Cooper was, and I just learning who the Clash was and stuff. But I listened to some pretty silly shit, and he would accost me in the hallway and go, What do you look here?
We went to
Listen.
high school together. Is what he's talking about. We went to high school together.
Yeah, yeah. We went to high school. Sorry, in Hazlitt,
Hazlitt, New Jersey, Raritan High School.
which I learned, which I didn't realize as I was surviving it, but is a pretty right wing fucking,
Hell yeah.
largely
Oh yeah.
hellhole.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But I got through, and this gentleman here is one of the reasons I made it through, because he was a lifeline to sanity and to all kinds of art and New York craziness. And so this man, in brief, turned me on to things like Suicide,
Yeah.
Alan Vega and Martin Rev. At 14, are you serious?
We were listening to all the bands you weren't supposed to listen to back then if you wanted to get through the halls unaccosted, like Suicide and
Yeah,
any punk rock stuff.
yeah. He would come
Dead
up and say,
Kennedys.
yeah, he'd say, "Here, read this book." What's this? Jim Carroll, Basketball Diaries? Okay, I'll read this. And so, and people, if you know who Jim Carroll is in the Basketball Diaries, that's a fucking portal right there. If you read the Basketball Diaries, like, a lot of you saw the movie years later with DiCaprio, but I read it at 14 thanks to this man, and that's it. The doors are blown open, because then you're understanding a whole bunch of stuff about punk rock and art and activism and a whole ball of wax. I went on.
I didn't see the movie because I refuse to see movies like that are based on really, really good books.
Yeah,
the book is fantastic.
Book's fantastic.
Yeah,
So
I'm not so much there with his poetry or anything, but his lyrics are really cool. And that Jim Carroll album, the first Jim Carroll album.
there was two. I
There was
think
two. Yeah, Catholic
the first one.
Great fucking
Yeah.
record.
It's too late.
Yeah.
No one that I even wanna imitate. I forget the lyrics, but
Yeah, no.
we could do the whole hour on Jim Carroll. But racing through here, I wanna speed up my thoughts. But so we listen to a lot of music, and one of the main other ones was the Plasmatics. Holy shit. As I said in the intro here, a lot of you all bought a T-shirt later in the mall. We were listening to the Plasmatics. We went to
Miley Cyrus is going to be selling more fucking Plasmatics T-shirts than Wendy O. Williams did, and that's a fucking crime.
We saw the Plasmatics. So this is kind of background. Jump ahead.
I couldn't hear for 3 days after that show that we saw. My hearing was blown out for 3 days.
Blistering. And there's video of that show, folks. On
is there?
Well, there's video of the pier one.
Yeah. That's where they blew up the car at the end of the pier. The gig that we saw when they were doing concerts at the pier, which were really great, and we were really close. We had like 10th row seats or something like that. Yeah. I couldn't hear for like 3 days.
Unbelievable.
Rock and roll, dude.
I feel like we saw them in a club too, or I saw them some second time somewhere, but it's all a blur at that point.
Yeah.
But all the music, and then we'll go to college and stuff like that. And years later, he's editing High Times. He then went on to edit Penthouse Forum, edit Screw, managing editor of all those. And he's churned out a couple amazing books. This man is the author of the official heavy metal book of lists.
Yep.
And the complete Linda Lovelace. Yep. So just all over the map here. So
I try and be well-rounded.
In
my debauchery, I try and be well-rounded.
So there's so many places. So folks, you have a couple ideas on some questions that you can hit us with. But I wanted to start with, since it just happened, give us some of your thoughts, because you were right there at High Times with Jack Herrer and all these articles coming through, and David Peel and all these incredible things Normal was doing. How does it feel living in New York City? And wow, you guys have crossed the finish line. Marijuana is legal. Tell us a little bit about.
I only just found out. I know that it happened a couple of days ago, but I've been doing a lot of work on something we can discuss later. And I was just, I'm fishing around that hellhole that is Twitter, and it said what you can do with marijuana when in New York City. So I go to it, and much to my glee, I find out I can actually walk outside of this apartment anywhere that they smoke cigarettes and light up a joint and not get fucking arrested.
Yeah.
Which is real nice. I can now own up to 3 ounces of weed and not get fucking arrested for it, which is one of the biggest freaking jokes in this city.
It's amazing.
Ever getting rousted for weed in this town was just a fucking joke. If these cops didn't have better things to do with their lives than arrest David Lee Roth in fucking Washington Square Park for copping a nickel bag of shit weed, then that's a sad state of affairs we're in. No, I'm very happy about it. I'm very happy about it. It's about fucking time. And really, the thing that the cynic in me, I didn't think that Cynthia Nixon had a chance of getting elected. I liked the idea that she was running, and it's not because like I'm so anti Cuomo or anything, because I don't really, you know, give too much of a thought about him anyway. As long as it's not a fucking Republican running things, I'm good. But I couldn't help but think that all of a sudden, you know, she ran on the legalizing weed
Right.
ticket,
Sure.
and he was like, "Well, so am I. I want to legalize it now too." And then she gets blown out. He gets elected. And it's like, "Oh, by the way, we're not legalizing weed." It's like, you suck, man. Like you're even worse than fucking De Blasio, who I fucking hate for another reason. You can ask me about that in a sec. But
Okay.
but Cuomo, I could not help but think that this whole like, oh, by the way, weed is legal, happens like 2 weeks into his sexual harassment scandal. Like, oh well, okay, I'm kissing gals and doing this over. Oh, legal weed. Here you go. It's like, oh, legal weed. It's like maybe I'm cynical, but if that's what it took, it's about time. It's about fucking time. There's better things to crack down on than me smoking a joint.
Oh my God! The whole thing is no, it's unthinkable, and I've been a victim of it myself. I had you know.
Can't imagine why that would be.
I was profiled. Oh my God, so many times, so many times. Fortunately, I learned pretty early on to just not have some weed in the car, or have an incredibly extreme hiding technology going on.
My philosophy was always never carry any more weed than you can afford to get arrested with.
Well, that you can swallow, right? Yeah. But I got profiled all the time. I
I'm
got
sure.
all the time driving while black, and it's funny. It's one of the things. I live in the South now for 14 years, and people ask all the time. They kind of, how is it there? It must be terrible, the racism. And I go, you know what? It's there. I could go find it. I could drive 45 minutes and find some rebel flags and shit. But it's nothing like what I faced in Monmouth County, New Jersey.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it.
Nothing like what I heard about right next door in Staten Island. It's nothing like what I deal with now. Yeah. When I'm on tour in the whole country, when we go to Long Island, some crew guy always says some racist shit. I set my watch by it.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. I mean, like back in Raritan, you were in our class back in Raritan. You were like what, the only black dude there?
I was the only black kid in the class of 1981.
Yeah, 429 people graduated. 429.
Unbelievable. Which, to be honest, like on. Let's see.
Most of them didn't deserve it, I'm sure, but
yeah, the average of black people in America is about 13%. So we should have, if we were on the national average, which, to be fair, hardly any part of America is. Yeah. Some are above, some are below. Like Atlanta or something's 40, 50%. The whole state is higher. Vermont is point.
There's one black dude in Vermont. Yeah.
Yeah, but 13% of, let's see if I made it through high school. 13% of 425 would be something like 64, 65 people. So we were way off. There were about 5 other blacks in the whole school.
Yeah.
So they were all younger than me, and I later learned from one or two of them that, like, yeah, man, thank you, because you were making it. You were 1 year or 2 years ahead of us, and we kind of, but it was
getting everyone used to the idea that there are going to be black people in the school.
Yeah, exactly. It was fucked up, and again, but truth be told, a lot of people have had a hellish time in high school for various reasons. They were picked on for this or that, and it's about finding your little crew, your little team.
Yeah.
And knowing that you can get through. And so you were one of those teams. And another one, I wish happy birthday. I'm going to wish happy birthday to another one that would help me get through. Mumbo, John Cochran, is his birthday today.
Happy birthday, Mumbo.
He was another. There was a small crew, like Tim Brennan, like 5 or 6 people, Glenn Kluderoff. And we were all freaks. Now I look back, I'm like, wow, I found fucking weirdos. Whew, thank you. So that's okay. So that's a bit on weed and racism in New York. Tell us a little bit how you ended up landing at High Times and then to all the other editing jobs. What got you your first kind of jump into something as amazing as High Times?
Well, I was an English major in college. I went to Pace University as an English major. So my options were limited when I graduated,
Okay.
and I spent about a year maybe unemployed after I got out of school. And a friend of mine had some friends in New York City who lived in North Jersey, and they were friends with this guy named John Holmstrom,
Ah,
who
yes.
very famous artist. He's the guy you know his stuff from every T-shirt that's ripped off his Ramones pictures, and he did the cover of Road to Ruin and
Right.
lots of Ramones graphics and shit.
Right. Right.
So it turns out that High Times was having, and he worked at High Times at that time.
Okay.
High Times was having a photo shoot in a club, and they wanted people to just come and do stupid shit. And the theme of the photo shoot was, I think, like a party that goes wrong or something like that.
Okay.
So I go to this party. They ask if I can go, and I get accepted. And I go to this party, and what they were going to do was, for this photo shoot, put a pot of spaghetti on my head as the cure for someone who's having a bad trip.
Okay. A
So
cure.
yeah, that's the cure. So they put all this, wet spaghetti on my head and on my shoulders and shit. No sauce, thank God.
Right. I
And
remember.
and the photographer, this guy John Etter, goes, all right, now make it look like like you're having a bad trip, and someone says, I'm like, and I got it in one take. It's like, holy shit, that was great. So they take the picture, and it comes out,
I didn't know that.
and I heard that there was an editorial job opening up at High Times. So I sent along my resume, which I had done and no one gave a fuck about. And I sent this letter along saying, oh, next time we talk, we can discuss like the best impasta headwear. So I sent this off, and I got a call back on a Saturday. I remember they want to come in. They want me to come in for an interview. And I got off the phone with my father, and he was like, "Oh, who is that?" And I was like, "Oh, I just got off the phone, looking for a job. I'm gonna be working in High Times in about like a week." Because I was so positive that I was going to get this. My father was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I got the gig, and I stayed there for like 3 years and went through a whole bunch of weird shit, as you can imagine.
Are- You know
But yeah, it was,
that I didn't know that, and I remember that picture. That was an epic picture, and I think I think that's how I found it. I was an avid pothead and an avid High Times. Oh man, every month to run down to the store and get High Times. I
I was
remember.
doing that since I was like 14.
Right? Yeah, sure. And I
One
remember
magazine
thinking,
place in town that had it, I was like, oh, here's my $1.50,
wow,
for
no, weed, it's weed magazines, skateboard magazines, and rock magazines. That was kind of,
oh
you
yeah.
know, that was what I and heavy metal. Actually, the magazine, the graphic
Yeah,
magazine,
yeah.
loved it. That was a major thing for me, heavy metal and that kind of graphic art. But High
High
Times,
Times and Mad got me through fucking high school. Like,
mad, yeah. I think I was flipping National Lampoon.
oh
Wow,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
huge. That's turned us into the
Oh,
Saturday
absolutely.
that we are. Paul Krasner, people like that. But Paul Krasner, who also wrote in High Times. But I think I was flipping through High Times because I'd get it every month. That's how I found out. I'm flipping through High Times, and there was a picture of you with like goggles.
Oh, that, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
You, you,
God,
you
that
were
was a nightmare.
you
That
were
shoot was a fucking
modeling
nightmare.
like some kind of tie dye.
It was a tie dye hoodie. Yeah, it was the High Times Christmas guide, because of course
Right.
every household needs the High Times Christmas guide.
And I'm
And the
yeah.
the hoodie that I was wearing was just some kind of cool hippie tie dye thing, which was all right. And the goggles that I was wearing, they were from a machine called a Synchro Energizer.
Right.
A, a Synchro Energizer, and this is like back in the late 80s. Synchro Energizer is basically an electro meditation device that you wear these goggles, and there's no glass in them, but there are lights that circle your eyes, and then you put on these headphones, and they hook you up to this machine. There used to be, back in that time, there were sensory deprivation tanks in New York City, and there
Sure.
were Synchro Energizer. There was one Synchro Energizer place.
Altered states.
Yeah, yeah, and they put the goggles on you. They put the headphones on, and you would hear like a sequence of bips and bleeps going from ear to ear, and you'd see all these like combinations of flashing lights, and you were supposed to close your eyes, just relax, and then you eventually kind of go to sleep, you know, and you wake up. They bring you out of it later. I would have no knowledge of anything going on because I was just out. So it takes you to a theta, I think, level of meditation that it takes like yogis like decades to work up to.
Figure out, yeah.
So it takes you down, and then they let you do it for an hour, and then they bring you up. They slowly turn the music up and stuff, and you come out just feeling like totally refreshed and like, oh my God, I'm so relaxed, and like your brain is like flying with ideas and stuff. And you could go and do this in this place. At the time, they started marketing home versions of them, and that's what the thing was in High Times. Like you could get your own, like the machines, the industrial ones are like 50 grand a piece. They're really, really expensive. But you could get one for like $600 at one point once they turned it into a little thing like this, you know, like a little, they were like, otherwise they were boxes like that. But it was a synchro energizer. Great fucking thing. I wish that there was still, you know, that place was still around.
So it really was a thing, and it was efficient. Okay.
And it really worked. Yeah. Yeah. I brought the entire staff of High Times there. And so like, you got to try this out. And they loved it. Yeah.
I remember, and it's funny because the memory also includes how stark the difference was at that time. Because now, if you, let's say you are reading a printed thing or magazine, or you saw someone online, in terms of reaching that person, it's minutes, right? You find the website, you do message, and some assistant or someone says, yeah, I'll pass the message along. Especially if the message is, hey, old high school pal, I've lost track of you. Because you would lose track of people back then. Because if you didn't have a phone number, you moved from one apartment to another. No one knew where anyone was.
And especially in the small, you know, backwards sort of town that Hazlitt was,
right.
There were some people who were destined to stay there forever. And if they want to, that's fine. You know, I got no problem with it. You can have it. And there were others who wanted to get the fuck out of that town, you know.
Yeah.
And we were too, who needed to get the fuck out of that town.
And you would sometimes call up someone's parents or something, but somehow we reconnected, and you know that was great. So then, okay, so High Times, and then you what was next? Was Screw next?
Yeah. I wound up going to Screw. I worked at High Times for a while, and after a bit, I mean, there was so much acid going around in that office, and there was so much, like, you could just light up a fucking joint and, you know, during the day and all this, you know, and it was really cliquey, you know. I mean, looking back on it, it's one of the best times of my life, but it was really cliquey back then. And, you know, after 3 years, I just fucking had it. Right. So I split, and I spent the next 9 months unemployed until there was an ad in the New York Times for Men Sophisticate seeks editorial, you know, suck ass to do whatever it is we fucking tell you, which turned out to be High Society magazine.
Okay.
So I my sister told me about that, and I applied to the job, and I really I worked at getting that job, you know. So I got it, and I wound up being the managing editor of a magazine that they were doing called Hawk. It was a startup, and they didn't do exactly what they were going to do with it that they told us, you know. That they said it's going to be no girl stuff, and it's going to be this, that. It was going to be details with tits.
Okay. And
it turned out just being another hardcore magazine, which I had no problem with. But it was really corporate, and you know, you had to wear a suit. I'm like, oh, fucking, I'm working in porn. I want to wear a fucking suit.
I have a suit.
If you were cool on Fridays, they would let you go in without a tie.
Oh my God!
I was like, oh,
really? Wow!
I know. Yeah.
What a
necktie Friday, you know. So a guy that I knew from High Times got in touch with me about 6 months after me working there and said, hey, there's a position opening up at Screw. You should send your resume down, which I did in a heartbeat, because the school that I went to, Pace University, Al Goldstein, who was the publisher of Screw, he went to Pace University. Oh. So I had this kind of, you know,
a little.
We had a relationship already. So I sent my resume down, and they saw High Times and like the writing samples and stuff that I gave them. And they called me in for an interview. And it turns out that the managing editor as well also went to Pace University.
Right.
So there were like 3 of us there. And I got the job there, and, you know, I stayed there for 7 years and learned a fuck of a lot about publishing. And
I'm sure.
Yeah. You know, Goldstein was like I always say he was like the hardest boss that I ever fucking worked for, which is true. But also the best. I mean, because you had to learn things correctly and not ever fuck them up. ever, you know. And I fucked a couple of things up, and luckily he didn't get fired because he would, you know, up, someone up there got fired because a piece of fax paper hit the floor in his apartment.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
So I mean, but he was a great boss, really hard boss. He would never be able to get away with the shit that he was doing then, like now.
well, yeah. No one in New York, New York publishing, barely
Yeah.
one in New York. Period could get away with the shit
Oh,
they.
they probably wouldn't even put Screw on the stands these days, you know. And he had Midnight Blue, and you know, the first editorial thing was like the "fuck you" segment, you know.
Right.
You'd
Right.
never get away with that shit.
And no, you're right, and the political stuff too was always great. I thought, and we just lost Larry Flint, and he's another person where he showed that there's a First Amendment fight that was going
Yeah,
on from all
yeah.
these magazines. I wanted to jump over. Of course, High Times, is all about weed and like you said, acid, and there was a lot of blow in there and all kinds of stuff. But marijuana is what a great plant and what a great thing.
Oh yeah,
And I learned so much from High Times about the hemp movement and all the ways you can use marijuana. And it's great to see it now helping people, CBD,
yeah.
all that. So let's talk about plants because that's another part of your life. You're plant based, you're
Yep.
veg, you've been for many years. Tell us a little about that. When did you go vegetarian and what sparked that for you?
Okay, I was lucky enough to grow up in the '70s, right? And on TV in the '70s, um, there were ladies like Betty White, who you might have heard of, Doris Day, who you might have heard of. They were the first people, Bridget Bardot to an extent. They were the first ones who I heard talking about this thing called animal rights.
Wow.
And this was back when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. Now, I've always loved animals. Always loved animals. Always had like a soft spot for them more so than the people around me, right? So they, I see Doris Day and Betty White. I remember Betty White was on an episode of Password, and Alan Ludden, who's her husband, brings up your animal rights thing, and I'm like, wow, this is an interesting
Wow.
concept that animals have the rights to not be fucked with, you know.
So
So
you're
I kind of take that to heart.
something. You How old are you? You're 13.
13, 14, something like
Yeah,
that.
great. So
Um,
in your head, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I like this idea. I like this idea. Time goes on, and I love animals and stuff, but I'm still, when I was happy when I got my first leather jacket, and I was still eating meat. My father was German, so he'd bring home like blood sausage and tongue and all that shit.
Sure.
Great bouillabaisse. Time goes on, and I go to college, and I find out, like PETA had their profile had been raised by throwing red paint on people and stuff. Because
Right.
for me, like the whole vegetarian thing, it's totally animal rights based.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily a health thing, even though I think that
Sure.
that's a nice sort of byproduct of it.
Bonus. Yeah, yeah.
But it's always been an animal rights thing. So PETA's profile had been raised with their protests, and I wasn't so much a fan of the throwing paint on people, but I like their protest things like putting people in cages on the street and handing out flyers and shit like that. So I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But it really happened in earnest when in 1985 I did a semester abroad at Middlesex Polytechnic in London.
Okay. Wow.
And the great thing about colleges in London is that they let the students in the student union, which had a bar that opened up at like noon, which was also hilarious. They would let all these political groups set up their little tables. So you had like the little Tory table over here, you had the labor students over here, and there was an animal rights table over here. And they had all these pamphlets, and it was the pigs in the butcher shop and the monkey with the electrode in his head and the cat in the collar and shit. And I'm looking at this, and I'm reading these things, and it's basically saying that animals have a right to live and not be fucking experimented on or eaten, or elephants used in circuses and shit like that. So I'm like, all right, I'm getting this more and more now. During that semester, a name I'm sure you're going to know, Captain Sensible, did a warm-up gig
Okay.
before his first solo tour.
Oh.
And he was a huge animal rights vegetarian. I'm sure he probably was vegan at the point,
Right.
but his whole thing was, be sensible, be vegetarian. So he does this gig there, and goes into this like 2 or 3 minute rant about, oh, I was walking past the butcher shop the other day and I saw this pig hanging there and it looked really nice. I really wanted to eat it. He's like, why don't you just stop doing shit like that?
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, so as more and more of it, as I heard more and more of it, I was like, you want to know something? If all it takes to help bunnies and kitties and dogs is to not eat meat, I'm giving it up. I did that for a couple of months.
Yeah.
I get back home, my father, he's like, oh, how was your trip? And I was like, I'm a vegetarian. I was like, oh, fuck,
And
was he would have rather I come out as gay, He's like, oh, vegetarian. And he's like, and he goes, why? I'm like, well, because animals have a right to self-determination. And he's like, oh, God, what the fuck, liberal arts student, I do that for a couple of months. I don't do it correctly, so I started getting weak and sicklier than I look now, So I'm like, all right. So I went back to it. About 4 years later, I'm living in Jersey City, and I had just been fired. Not fired. I just quit High Times, and I'm kind of like, I got to change my life. And I'm reading all this stuff from PETA because I had joined PETA and I was getting their monthly magazines or quarterly magazines. And one of them said, like, now's the time to do it. I was like, you want to know something? Okay, I am going to actually do it for good this time.
Sure, you got
I lived in Jersey City about 3 blocks away from a White Castle. And this, I should sue Morgan Spurlock's ass. I went to that White Castle for 3 meals a day, every day for a week. And I said, I'm going to just eat that shit until I am so sick of eating meat, I'm never going to touch it again. Wow. And I ate nothing but fucking White Castle for a fucking week. And then I'm like, I'm done with it. And I have not backslid at all. There's every once in a while at a barbecue or something, you get slipped the wrong burger off the thing. I'm like, wow.
Okay, yeah.
But, ever since then, I managed to maintain it. So it's been over 30 years at least.
Yeah. And ironically, do you know this? White Castle has vegan sliders now.
A lot of places do.
But of all places, like that's the one that's got me going.
I know.
Holy shit. But yeah, lots of places do, which I want to ask you about. Yeah.
Nothing against the fine employees of White Castle or Burger King or any of these fucking places who they all have their vegan burgers.
Or at least veg,
yeah. I wouldn't trust one of them to not have some fucking kid in the back who's like, I'm going to give this to the vegetarian. And,
there's that.
I mean, you see all those videos of them like stomping on the salad. And
yes.
Fucking
that's true. No,
Thousand Island dressing and shit.
Yes. There's that aspect. And, fortunately, some of them look different. Some of them look, but yeah, that's concern number one. And then
the Burger King ones were really good. I haven't tried, nor would I try the White Castle ones. But when Burger King made their move to it, I tried them, and they were pretty tasty.
Yeah, and McDonald's has one now, and the Burger King ones you can get them frozen in a pack of 6 or something in the store.
Yeah.
If someone were to want to, but I'm with you. Yeah, that's just peripheral to me. I'm not rushing over to Wendy's or something because
no.
But I do applaud it because it means for some, you know what it means too.
Their accountants are happy is part of it too. You're like, oh, we're going to get the vegetarians.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a total cynical cash grab with them. I applaud them doing it, but I certainly think that it's just they want the fucking money.
Absolutely.
I'm like, hey, it's America. Go.
Absolutely. I will say, because especially doing this for almost a year, I read a lot of veg news, and of course, as you know, I was a retailer for over 15 years, and this is, I will say, because I saw this then and I'm seeing it now. Let's remember, we're in our late 50s now. So what's happening, though, is there's now people at those companies, at Chipotle, at Starbucks, at Coca-Cola. There's people in every walk of life now who are from our generation and younger, people half our age. So you actually have people in these companies who have a little bit more of a sensibility that, hey, I'm actually a vegetarian, and now I work at American Airlines or some other,
and because those people are in, they're a lot more accommodating to people like us, which I appreciate. I'm good with that, because starting it back in the late '80s, even it was hard to find fake burgers and shit. You had to get the stuff in a box and make it yourself, and it was like it
Sure.
always came out like shit. And when you could find something that was pre-made, it was expensive as hell. I mean, it still is more expensive than
Yes, when you go the Whole Foods route, and
yeah.
I know anyone that's on this show a lot knows I spend a lot of time on talking about how to do this in an affordable way and in a way where you're making stuff. I was really lucky, and I went veg at age 18 or 19, 83, 84, and I was lucky. It really was never difficult for me because I don't know, maybe I'm having a Caribbean family, and my mom immediately just said, "Sure, I'll make you." So she all the side dishes and a lot of the Caribbean foods were already beans and Indian foods and
yeah.
curries and things, and I right away just started shopping. I just started driving, so I was able to go to the store. But right away I found like Progresso lentil soup and other things.
Yeah.
So I was lucky, and I loved falafel and things like that pretty
Oh
quickly.
yeah.
So okay, so that's a great story. You literally it was the animals and the cruelty.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, very little of what I've ever done in my life has ever been a health concern.
Right. That's great. And
but animals, it's like leave them the fuck alone.
Leave them alone. And did you see the little graphic that I made earlier today for the show?
No, I didn't.
Because it was very inspired by our journey as friends. Because first off, it was like a little bit of a punk rock. Sorry?
I'm blushing here. I remember
it was a little bit of a punk rock thing, like how fast I threw it up and the not well thought out fonts and everything.
Comic Sans.
And the bad the cuts and stuff. But being on that punk rock thing, I had to put something in your face, and which I do all the time. But on this thing, so I have a little graphic of.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
But there's but there's that idea, right?
Yeah.
Like, people see that like, oh my God, that's shocking, and it's like, why? That's what you're eating.
That's what you're fucking eating. That's what you're paying top dollar for, is to have some fucking, goose's.
They're
totally destroyed livers, smeared on a fucking cracker.
They're taking an animal, putting it in an immobile setting, and forcing something down its throat. And so
that's the one problem. It's funny because even though I started out, in England when I saw all those pamphlets and it was the pigs in the butcher shop and all this shit,
right?
And I really, I love PETA, and I think that they're really good. Their main talent is manipulating the media. They get publicity really, really well. And I used to give them publicity in Penthouse Forum and shit. I do PSAs. I did a whole piece on there. I'd rather go naked than wear fur thing. I
remember that. Yeah.
But they're they tend to do this stuff that I always call like animal torture porn.
They
gotta show even 30 years down the line. They gotta show the cat with the electrode in its head. They gotta show the monkey in the cage and shit. It's like, okay, I don't need to fucking see that. You've triggered me into it enough. So I'm like, I don't need that shit.
But does some fresh wave of 16-year-olds need to see it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially just because, because I was young when I saw it, and it made an impression on me.
It does. Yeah.
I don't need to see it now.
Right.
It's like walking past like an this is the thing that I have like animal rights people and like anti-abortion people, because they're really, I'll get shit for saying this, they're really kind of the same thing. In their approaches.
Overlap. There's overlap.
There seriously is.
Overlap.
I mean, like throwing red paint on someone wearing a fur coat is not quite as bad as like killing an abortion doctor with a fucking long rifle. But they make their points by showing like scraped up, bloody fetuses, and by showing animals with the electrodes in the head and the whole 9 yards. And it's like, I understand that's not the battle. That's not my battle. Their battle is not mine. But I get it with that. And I'm big on like the animal liberation front. I love those fucking guys.
Yeah, it's great. That's great stuff. But no, you're right. We got to take these things case by case, but I always calm myself down and say, you know what? There's a 14-year-old who would love to see that. This was another one that I love. That You ever see that?
No,
Just a
that's funny.
series of really great
Oh yeah, no, I like the lion. I love the lion one. Yeah,
a
yeah.
fox taking a human, and people see these things and they go, that's extreme, and it's like a bull goring.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you want to know what's fucking extreme? Is Donald Trump Jr. cutting the tail off a fucking elephant he just killed so he can hang it up in his
No,
fucking uh,
dude.
penthouse somewhere as a
Oh,
trophy, as if he should be proud that he just, killed a fucking animal like that. Because the animal's got such a fucking chance against like a
well,
fucking
that's the
bull
thing.
rifle,
Some kind of exactly. Let me see if there's some questions here. Let's see what some thoughts are. Let's see on YouTube. Hey, Neil Alexander, how are you, cat? What's going on? John Oliver said the same thing. Okay. This is a few minutes ago, so I'm not sure about what, but
I never
yeah.
watched John Oliver, by the way.
Sorry.
I never watched John Oliver, so I didn't copy from him.
He's pretty funny. I like him.
He's
Anthony,
okay. He's okay.
hey, Anthony, how are you? And hey, Sharon, how are you?
Hi,
Lurking,
Sharon.
flying
Hi.
over to Facebook. So let's go back to some comments here. Andy Warhol in the house, says Aaron Price. Uh,
Probably you. You're the
it's,
Black Andy Warhol. I always knew that.
well,
I knew that back in high school.
I play the song sometimes, so Nick says you saw them with BOC in '81. Who's that?
Plasmatics, baby.
Huh?
Plasmatics. That's when they were doing their heavy metal crossover.
Did they open for BOC that
Oh,
time?
probably, yeah.
Wow, it's a blur. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the other time I saw them. Yeah. Sabine says, "Crazy, you sit at rock concerts." Yeah, some concerts we do. We didn't sit at the Plasmatics.
Oh, hell no.
Standing. And I've seen seats in Germany, with all due respect. So
I like sitting in rock shows. I mean, it depends.
it depends.
When I saw Body Count like a year and a half, 2 years ago
Yeah.
at the Gramercy, beautiful theater, one of my favorites. They got like, the pit is down, the stage is here, the pit is down there, and they got like maybe 200 seats up in the back. I was like, I'm too old to be fucking mixing it up with these kids. Like, if I didn't think I was gonna get my head fucking busted open, I would do it. But so I sat down. I was like, yeah, okay. I sat down for fear.
There's a time. There's a
Yeah,
time.
time
You
and
know,
place for it.
yeah, definitely. So let's see. A couple good questions. Yeah, Pyramid Club. Yeah, Gwen, my friend Gwen is a DJ out at WUSB in Stony Brook, and she says Pyramid Club. So we can talk about that in a second.
Yeah, I
Lurkers are
played the
here.
Pyramid Club with one of my shitty bands.
Yeah, I played there twice actually. And 6 people were there or something.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
You know, uh,
it's probably the
it's
same 6 people that came to see my band too.
I love it. Well, that's the first thing. My quick response to that is, again, it's not going to be popular, but I'm um, I'm an entropy guy. Everything's returning to dust. Everything's falling apart.
Yeah,
And I'm a Darwin guy, and I'm a Carlin guy. The fucking planet is gonna spew magma at some point, and it's gonna. Do you know what magma does? It reduces everything back to just carbon and lava, and so there's a part of me that I recycle, I compost, I'm vegan for the environment, for animals, but I also know that in a flash, the Earth is just gonna go bingo, and all of our thoughts of styrofoam and plastic and all this shit in a nanosecond. It will. So things die, things go away. Humans, animals, we all die, and so clubs die. And I know that's
yeah,
going to be
yeah.
fairly popular. And someone, but
It happened with CBs.
it sucks. But
Happened with the bottom line, and,
yeah.
and when it happened with the bottom line, when it happened with CBs, I realized I hadn't been there in like 6 years.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
You know,
What I don't like is if we're going to conglomerate and then Live Nation buys it up, or they buy. That's what I don't like.
oh, Live Nation's going to own fucking everything.
I don't want a monopolization of our art spaces and stuff. Of course
Oh,
not.
you're too late for that.
Oh, way too late. But this opposite thing that everything's going to make it is kind of a trophy thing that we. Anyway, having said that, it sucks. Don't get me wrong. I love the pyramid. I've been there a few times.
Let me just say this one thing real quick. If
Please.
you're a George Carlin guy, you have to hear. I kind of like it when a lot of people die.
Is that one of his routines?
It's a posthumous album that came out,
Okay.
and that bit is like maybe 10 minutes long. I was crying by the end of it. It is so fucking hilarious. And he apparently recorded it September 10th, 2001. Yeah, the guy is so fucking, he was so on top of shit, you know, but it's fucking hilarious. I kind of like it when a lot of people die. You gotta, that's a, all you people out there have to listen.
Yeah, I put it on my, I'll put it on my notes here.
Yeah.
I kind of, no, that's good. Well, we're both relatively misanthropic, and I was interrupting you when you said that you might have been at a barbecue and someone slips your burger, and I said that's why I stay away from people. You know,
yeah.
Across the board.
When I started at Screw, the managing editor who had gone to Pace University, we're getting to know each other and all this. And there's a really great artist who worked at Screw named Danny Hellman, who's just a wonderful, wonderful artist. And he was a vegetarian. He's a vegan now, and you know he was one of the animal rights guys. And I tell this guy, you know, the managing editor, like, oh, and I'm a vegetarian too. He's like, oh, like Danny? I'm like, yeah. And he goes like, one of those like animal rights people? I'm like, yeah. He goes, are you one of those people who likes animals like and hates people? I'm like, yeah, well, yeah. As a matter of fact, I am. So you're on the list, pal. There you go.
You got me there. I want to jump over to some of I got a question or two that ties in with some of your wonderful books and some of your writing. But I wanted to give a shout out here. Let's see, a few minutes ago he was here. Hopefully he's still here. Gary Fonseca, what's up, buddy?
Oh my God!
Right? You know Gary Fonseca?
Yeah.
he had the record store.
Oh my God! Yeah.
He had the record store called Now and Then in.
Yeah. I bought tons of Blondie shit from him. Yeah,
dude. Yeah. Well, Gary says Gary's standing up for Hazlitt. He's saying I liked Hazlitt, and well, you know, Gary.
You're entitled. I mean, yeah.
Well, you know what's cool about Gary, and I said this to him the other day.
Oh, I always liked Gary. Yeah, he was always.
Well, you know, did you know this? That Gary's a pretty progressive guy. He's not from the Hazlitt swamp, after all. Like, no offense, but so many people were that if someone had asked me, I would have said, well, the guy's a business owner. He's a big Republican. You know, because in Hazlitt, it's like it's so right wing. So Gary and I are friends on Facebook, and.
But he owned a record store, so I mean, so that makes him like a dope smoking, you know, liberal. You know?
You would
in Hazlitt anyway.
You would think, but a lot of them are not. But Gary, beyond that, it was always just a really intelligent voice in Hazlitt. And
I always liked him. Yeah.
Another thing that got me through was once I could drive, man, I would be at Now and Then if I had any extra money, because what happened with Gary is once he learned what kind of weird music I liked, he would point shit out. He'd be like, you know what? There's a band called Triumvirate. You need to hear them. They're over in the used section, or you know, it would be, you know, some Tangerine Dream soundtrack or something.
Yeah.
So Gary, there were good things in Hazlitt, and you were one of them, bro.
Yes, this is true.
But it was.
I'd walk into the place and it was like, I just got the Japanese 12-inch of Call Me. I'm like, how much you gonna soak me for this one, motherfucker? You know? Nah, he was always fair with his prices, and he was always good with recommending stuff and
good bootlegs, yeah. So let's jump to some of your writing. So speaking of music, so you wrote a really great book, which I have on my bookshelf when I flip through it once in a while to look something up. But it was a great read, and it's called the Official Heavy Metal Book of Lists.
Oh my God! I just happen to have a copy of it here.
Oh, good. Show us that, because I was going to pull up. Let's see. Oh, how come it's glitching because of your There you go. Now I could see it. It was glitching because of the blur thing.
There. Oh yeah, right.
Not funny.
It is.
So okay, so
I managed to get the list of heavy metal vegetarians and vegans in there too. That's how I can. That's how I get to do my activism, because I do publishing all the time. I'm not really like a stand on the corner with a sign type of guy.
Sure.
Throwing paint on people. I get editorial stuff like that done, which I've done for decades and decades. So I made sure that got in there. I'm
gonna put a link up, folks. It's on Amazon right now for $16 and $17 for the paperback. There's some used copies. You probably shouldn't buy a used copy, right? Because you won't get paid for it.
The book sells for like $15.99 or $16.99 something. There are people selling it for like $29, $35. I'm like, why would you pay $35 for this fucking book?
That's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
There you go, folks. So I'll put that link for you. But there's the book, guys,
Yeah.
and I love it. Look at that, and I love the Kiss font and the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
now
Cliff
the
Todd is the guy who did the artwork.
okay.
Yeah, and he's fucking great. Great guy and a great artist.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about how you did this book and how you got Lemmy, the great Lemmy, to do the forward.
Well, I did the book because my friend Mike Edison, I gave him a copy of the Linda Lovelace book that I did.
Right.
And the Linda Lovelace book is really, it's very research heavy. You know, it's like an encyclopedia of Linda Lovelace.
And we'll talk about that in a minute too, folks. Yeah.
So he was working at a place called Backbeat Books,
Right.
and I run into him one time, and he's like, "I got a proposition for you." I'm like, "Yeah, what's this?" Like, I want you to do the heavy metal book of lists, because they had just done one with Hanson Dick Manitoba, who did the punk rock book of lists, and Amy Schaefer, I think is her name, did the punk rock book of lists. It's like, I want you to do the heavy metal one. I'm like, I haven't listened to metal in years and years and years. He's like, you can research the fuck out of it, you know, so I want you to do it. So I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I can research the fuck out of it. And once he told me what the parameters were, it was so much fun. It was so great because I got to listen to all that shit that I hadn't listened to in years because I was too busy listening to Blondie and punk and all that shit. And I learned a lot of new bands too, like a lot of just, you know, black metal bands and death metal bands and just a whole bunch of shit that really I still listen to now, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Fuck Off and Die is a great band from where are they from?
I had a pin.
Somewhere in Eastern Europe. But they're fucking great. I think it's a one man band. If you can find Fuck Off and Die. Remember that name.
Of course, I have a pin back in the high school days. Didn't you have a pin making machine, like buttons? Didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
You started making buttons, and I still have a few. I've got a Debbie Harry button, and I was like, wait a minute, and I would just cut out pictures from magazines, and hey, can you make a Pete Townsend button for me? You know, so, and you know, you also introduced me to bootlegs because most people know I'm a ginormous Who fan. And actually, you know, so I had one or two of the records when I was that young. But you're the first person that opened my mind to, wait a minute, there's illegal recordings that you're not supposed to have?
I love being able to do anything you're not supposed to do and being able to have anything you're not supposed to have.
That's built into you, man. But I remember you gave me a tape that was I think it was like the safety recording of doing Who Are You, so you could hear the engineer and you heard all this.
Oh yeah. Nature of the Beast, I think that one was called.
Oh man, so good. But okay, so Heavy Metal Book of Lists, folks, that's one of Eric's books that you can find. It's still available, and if you're a Kindle person, it's on Kindle.
Available on Kindle as well.
So I'll put that link in the chat. And how about your first? This is your first book, right?
Yeah.
Talk to
I
us
put
about
that one out myself.
Okay. Tell people who Linda Lovelace is. I mean, most of you know she was in Deep Throat, right?
Yeah.
So
Linda Lovelace was the star of the first big mainstream porn movie called Deep Throat. And she did that one movie and then kind of got out of the business. A couple years later turned anti-pornography and was aligned with Andrea Dworkin and Gloria Steinem and testified for the Mies Commission and all that. So she really had like a great story.
Interesting.
So when I was working, and she had a real bad history with Al Goldstein and Screw.
Oh.
So when I was working at Screw, I was kind of like, I wanted to figure out a way to get like a good writing credit. So I figured like, well, let me see if I can interview Linda Lovelace for Vanity Fair. Of course, I had no into Vanity Fair, but I was like, let me see if I can do this. So a friend of mine who worked at the company that put out the videotapes of Deep Throat got me her phone number. So I call her up one day and I'm like, my name is Eric. I work at Screw Magazine. I was totally upfront with her every step of the way. And I said, this has nothing to do with them, but I'd like to interview you for Vanity Fair.
Okay.
And when I made the call, I immediately recognized her voice. But she said, oh, well, Linda's not here right now. Can I take a message? I'm like, come on, I know it's you. Nice. So, I said, I put out the spiel and she's like, oh, well, I'll let her know. And do me a favor, don't ever call this number again. I'm like, fuck, So I'm all pissed off. A friend of mine suggests, well, why don't you write a book about her? So I was like, okay. So I figured out a way to actually write a book about, Linda Lovelace. Up at Screw, the archives were incredible. So I had tons of articles and magazines and all this shit. And I wound up writing this book. And when I was almost done with it, I gave her a call back and I said, I called you about 3 years ago and you told me never to call you back, but I know that this is you. It's not your secretary.
Yeah.
And I just wrote a book about you. And to tell you the truth, I think you got screwed by the press.
Right.
And I'd like to do an interview with you for the book.
Right.
And she was right on top of that. As soon as I said that I thought that she had gotten screwed by the press, which she had,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Then she was good with it. And I told her, like, with, the research that I had, I found her old manager, Chuck Trainer, who she always accused of beating her and forcing her into the business. He basically says, yeah, if she got out of line, I'd smack her. So I was like, all this shit is here. So I just piled it all up and, made the case. Larry Flint actually came out later and said, like, yeah, Chuck Trainer was a scumbag. Andrea True came out later, more.
Right.
Hated Chuck Trainer. Chuck Trainer.
Wait, what was Andrea True's connection to? Was she in pornography?
Andrea True was a big porn star in the 70s. That's what More is about.
Great. I love it.
Right.
Suburban parents singing that and not.
Yeah, I know, right?
Mama,
yeah.
How do you like it?
Turn the cameras on and, how do you like it more? It's like, yeah, it's about fucking porn and no one fucking knows this.
That puts a whole other aroma on the whole.
I know. Yeah, right. But yeah, so it actually, it changed the conversation about people's acceptance of her story, which I didn't make a fucking dime off that book. In fact, I took a huge bath on that book, huge bath.
So what happens when people buy it now? Who gets the money? Is it
if people buy now, I get the money.
Okay.
But I mean, in terms of like what it cost me to have it made, to have it printed, because the first run I had, this was back in the days before print on demand. I printed up like 1,000 copies myself, and that blew every fucking dime I had made from ghostwriting for Al Goldstein. I leveled my fucking bank account, figuring I would,
it's going to come back.
It's all going to come back. Hollywood comes knocking when she dies, and then like it got optioned twice, and then because Hollywood is the way Hollywood is, all of a sudden I was out of the picture because they didn't need me anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck this. I'm supposed to be making $100,000 off of this fucking book, to get out of the hole I'm in.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, that's the great part is you did it, and I'm always inspired by your authorship and I'm working on a book, and Eric gave me some good advice the other day, and we're going to continue that conversation. Jumping back here, Dave Harris, what's up, buddy? Dave is one of my dear friends who also realizes that the fringe is where it's at, bro. And
is that David Harris from the Church of Satan?
I don't know if Dave's in the Church of Satan, but sometimes I wonder. But no,
he's a big deal in the David Harris I know is a big deal in the Church of Satan.
Okay, this is a Dave Harris local guy, wonderful guy.
Oh, okay.
Musician, electronic musician, guitarist, photographer. But then
he's got to be in league with Satan. So.
That's right. One of the first people I met when moving here 14 years ago. Why? Because he was running a music store, an instrument store. So I'm one of the first people that I met. But Dave is saying the bit where Carlin replaces the word kill with fuck. Yeah, in all the classic scenarios. That's a great one. Gary Fonseca is saying, yes, that's right, Gary. I knew you were a stagehand these days. And Gary says to Eric, he says, I remember a Joan Jett tattoo. Do you still have the Joan Jett tattoo?
Yes.
Can we see that?
I don't know if... I'm working on a tiny lens here, but...
Right. Can you see that, folks? Look at that, folks. Oh, my God. Yes, it's a great
I also
shot.
have Amy Winehouse, and she can kick her leg, too.
That is fantastic. Yeah. Let Joan Jett take me back. Now, how
Miley Cyrus is now like accounting for most of Joan Jett's record sales after her NBA thing the other day.
Right, I heard about that. How old were you when you got that tattoo? Because I
just turned 18. It was the first week of August in 1981.
We were just out of high school, and that, folks, in 1981, any tattoo, an 18-year-old was kind of, but a tattoo, and so you tell the folks about how you got that, because that's her signature, right?
Yeah. When I was a young kid in the 70s, there was a talk show the David Susskind show, which I used to love. This guy, no, they didn't scream at each other. He didn't make them sing with him like fucking Jimmy Fallon and shit. They talked, and it was fucking brilliant. Black background, just people on a chair talking. And this guy did a show about fans, and he had like two real big like Elvis heads. He had a real big like Frank Sinatra fan, and he had this guy who was an Anne Margaret freak.
Okay.
Right? And this Anne Margaret freak had Anne Margaret's autograph tattooed on his arm. And this is like early 80s, not even early 80s, mid 70s.
79, yeah.
Yeah. It's 75, 79. So very, very early. So I'm like, I would really like to do that one day because I always wanted to get a tattoo, right? So I find out that Joan Jett is going to be playing with WNEW-FM's softball team in Clark, New Jersey.
Okay.
So I'm like, and I was so big on like the Runaways, and her first album had just come out, and she's totally great, which I knew long before anyone else did.
You did.
Yeah, I did.
I'll test in court. You turned around.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I go to this baseball game, and I get Joan to sign a Runaways bootleg for me, and she was cool with it. So after they're leaving, I'm like, Joan, sign my arm, and they're getting ready to. Her and the NEW crew are getting ready to go do like kamikazes in a bar, and she's like, hold on, this guy's gonna like, and I told her I'm gonna get it tattooed on. She's like, hold on, this guy's gonna get this tattooed on. So signs it and hits the van. The next day I go to Tony's tattoo parlor in Hazlet, New Jersey, off of Route 36, I think. And I have it tattooed on, right?
Wow.
My father is not pleased.
Yeah.
And he's just like, whatever. I lost it fucking, a long time ago. So the next week she was racing Ray Beadle at Englishtown Raceway. She drag raced this guy. He was a drag racing champion. He was going to be driving like a half van, and she was going to be driving like a full van or some shit like that. So she was drag racing this dude.
So Joan Jett was drag racing?
Yeah. Oh, man. She's she's a total fucking badass.
She's totally badass. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I'm like, I got to go and I got to show her this thing, So I go into the pits and, pay the extra money at Englishtown to go where the drivers are and all this. And I find her and I go up to her. I'm like, Joan, how you doing? I'm like, I did it. And she's like, holy shit. And you remember Cream magazine, right?
Lived on it.
There was the Stars Cars.
Yes, in the back. Yes.
Yeah, Stars Cars. There was a guy from Cream who was taking her picture there for Stars Cars.
God, yeah.
And so she goes, get that guy over here and have him take pictures of this. So she took all these pictures of my arm, for her scrapbook, which every couple of years I would hear, when I would meet someone who would see the tattoo, they'd be like, holy shit, Joan showed me that in her scrapbook. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine got into a meet and greet because her husband works with Joan's lawyer and says, send me a picture of your arm. I need something to talk to her about. So I sent her a picture and she's like, hold on, let me put this in my purse. And I was like, first off, Joan Jett carrying a purse, I never fucking expected.
Yeah, no, that's.
But she took the thing. But the funny thing, the absolute funniest thing about this was I went to go see Joan. I've seen Joan loads and loads of times back in the early 80s. Sure. I'm standing online and everyone would always see it. And they'd always ask a question. So I'm standing behind these two people and they're like, they look at the tattoo and they're like, oh my God, what's that? I'm like, oh, it's Joan Jett's autograph. And I swear to God, the woman in the couple goes, that's really funny. We have a friend who has Anne Margaret's autograph tattooed on his arm. And I was like, tell him that he's the reason why this thing exists.
Yeah. That's
yeah.
What a great story.
Everything always comes back full circle.
So I want to talk about your new book, and we'll talk about that. But I think you should just write the Eric Danville story, like just kind of.
No one gives a shit about my story.
No
one gives a crap about what happens to me. See, that's the whole thing. Is like we had this conversation. We had this conversation before.
Yeah, you're
right.
You're
a performer. You're a musician, and you're a performer. So you get out there and you project to people.
Yeah.
Right. You create things that people absorb and they appreciate and they love. I'm a fucking writer. I watch what goes on, and then I sit alone in my little apartment with my cheap beer, and I spill all this shit out. No one gives a shit about the right. I'm not Hunter Thompson. I'm not fucking Truman Capote. Unfortunately, I'm not fucking JD Salinger. No one gives a shit about you unless you're doing amazing stuff or you can convince them that you're better than you really are.
No, what a brutally honest thing, my friend.
Yeah.
And you've always been,
and I'm so good I don't have to convince people about it. They just
and no,
I
right,
let it speak
you're
for
right.
itself.
You're right, and I struggle with that because I'm working on my book, but I give up. I give up sometimes. I'm like, who cares? Who gives a fuck? And then when I turned the corner is when I realized here's the reason for the book. And you and I talked about that, and I realized, you know what? If my book can inspire someone to just live their dream, just find something they really like and just do it, and don't trust the critics. Don't trust. Once I
Did you
realized,
watch the trailer for the Paul Stanley book I told you about?
I did. Yes, that was.
And that's what he says. That's exactly what he says, and he's right. He's right.
Yes, thank you. From that conversation, you told me that. So, well, I will bug you because I think you do have a story, and you do have because your story is inspirational. Because you said "fuck it" to a fucked up town, to a fucked up environment, and you believed in great values. I think punk rock and activism, and empowering those who aren't empowered. And I'll say, as much as as people have their own definitions, feminism. One of the things that's awesome is that, we were listening to women artists. When we were 14, 15. Wendy O. Williams, Joan Jett, Grace Jones.
Debbie Harry knocked down doors.
Debbie Harry,
loads of people.
Grace Jones with Warm Leatherette and kind of, Nina Hagen.
Yeah.
We kind of gravitated to this, amazing energy that.
Oh, I wound up championing women in music for a long time.
Long time. Yeah.
And every once in a while, like it would start up and then it would go down. But really, there were so many talented women, and
yeah,
to the point now where it's like, I think that it's become like almost anticlimactic to have like these lists that come with every new generation of writers and shit. They're gonna do like the top 10 best women guitar players.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, okay, I get it. I interviewed an artist who you may or may not know named Niagara.
No.
Wonderful artist out of Detroit. She does a lot of really good like bad girl art. Absolutely fucking phenomenal. And she's real hot shit in Detroit and just sells all over the world. And I asked her one time, like, well, how do you feel about, being in an art show, like, an all women's art show and stuff like that? And she's like, I don't want to be in an all women's art show. I don't want to be in an art show just because it's women. I want to be in an art show because it's good.
Yes, there is that.
Like, I would like to think we've gotten past the point where.
Yeah, no, it's
you know what I mean? Like we're like you're good. You do it good for a woman.
I know.
No, it's not like that. Even Joan was talking about that back in the early 80s. It's like I'd like to think we're past that, but we're not.
Exactly, and I know someone's going to say, well, this is male privilege because you guys, and they're correct. But the one thing that glues it together is there are women saying this, as you just said. People like Joan Jett, people like Bjork say this all the time. So there's a discussion there. I guess my thing I would say, just like I said to you about how annoying PETA can be to us our age, there's a 14-year-old young girl, whether they're cis or trans or whatever, but there's someone that's 14 that needs to hear that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we just have to be all right. Let's, but you and I and people our generation, hopefully, unfortunately, a lot of people our generation, they need to hear it too, right?
That's true.
The motherfuckers we went to high school with haven't worked out equality, but no, it's and then the Joan and Joni, right? The Joan Armatrading and Joni Mitchell, like these are heroes that we were into in our teens. Tell us a little bit about your new book and what you're working on now. What, as much as you can say, can you?
I can say some about it. It's I can't say as much as I would like to because it's not done yet. I am writing a book for the 2 minutes of backstory. While this whole COVID thing was going on, I've been all like depressed and shit. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do for money? What am I going to do for money? So a friend of mine whose apartment I'm house sitting said, she knew that I wanted to learn how to write book proposals. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to write a book proposal for. It's actually for the company that put out the official heavy metal book list, the imprint, because they were bought up by another company. If I could do any fucking book that I wanted to pitch, what would it be? And I've always wanted to do a book about Stairway to Heaven, which surprisingly enough, because I fucking hated Led Zeppelin in high school. I didn't so much hate Led Zeppelin, I hated their fans. Because the first 2 albums are fucking brilliant.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Led Zeppelin 4 actually saved me from getting my ass kicked in Haslett one day. Because I'm walking back from, it might have even been Gary Fonseca's store, with a copy of Led Zeppelin 4 in a bag, and these 3 or 4 hatless thugs come up to me like, hey, what's in the bag, punk rock faggot? Better not be some of that punk rock. And I'm like, it's a copy of Led Zeppelin 4. They're like, oh, cool, man, Stairway.
Let him pass on.
You know? So I go home and listen to it. I'm like, album's all right. But I've always been like fascinated by the song, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
because it's like, it's got some weight behind it, you know? So I pitched it where, and this is where the love of bootlegs comes in. What it's going to be is, it's called, was that the doorbell? Do you have to go get that?
I don't think so, but
okay. The book is called Does Anybody Remember Laughter? 50 years of Stairway to Heaven. And what it is 25 essays about 25 notable performed versions of Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, from the time that they were writing it until the last one is the trial, the Stairway to Heaven plagiarism trial. All of it off of tapes that I have, because I have a huge Led Zeppelin bootleg collection, like the Milan show, and the first time they played it in America, the last time they played it in America, the first time after the album came out, and all this shit. And then the second 25, because it's got to be 50 because I'm that anal, are 25 cover versions that I think span a good overview of the different artists and the different, you know, styles that it's been done in. So I'm plowing together with that, and it's got to be done in like actually 5 weeks from today.
Okay.
So I owe 85,000 words in 5 weeks, so it can get done in time for the 50th anniversary of the release of Led Zeppelin 4, which is November 8th, 1971. So it'll be, you know, 20 years on November 8th. 20
yeah. Wow. Well,
and I've really actually come to really enjoy. I understand why it's a great song now.
Sure.
After having listened to it so many fucking times. It's really well done. It's a well crafted job. And one of the points that I actually make in it is, you know, asking the big question, why is it the biggest song and all? Because it's not their best song.
No.
And Led Zeppelin 4 isn't even their best album.
Right.
But so why that song? And that's what I attempt to answer through 85,000.
No, it's I know I vacillate between you know, Physical Graffiti, Presence.
I hate fucking Physical Graffiti is a shit album. I'm sorry.
I like it, but it's there's some
wrong.
You're
wrong, son. You're wrong.
Well, there's some dead spots in it, but again, I don't say it's my favorite, but I put it in the list sometimes. But Presence is way up there. That's just so weird. And
Presence is a weird album. Yeah,
I love it. I often love the weird record. But you know what's been for the past couple of years? I a lot more. I liked it a lot when it came out, but it's elevated. Is In Through the Outdoor. I think that's great. A lot of people shit on that. What do you think? Into the Outdoor.
It's weird how. Okay. These are Led Zeppelin's albums. Heavy blues album, heavy riff album, acoustic nice album, Led Zeppelin 4, Prague album, shitty live album, shitty double album, which could have been like a single record. It could have been a single. Fucking outtakes, man. It's half outtakes. Exactly. And that's because I think that was the first one that they put out on Swan Song. Oh, well, our manufacturer suggested retail price just went up $2 because we're getting all the money because it's our record company. Jimmy Page, there you go. Presence, not quite as good as Houses of the Holy, you know, still proggy as hell. A couple of dumb songs, but In Through the Outdoor,
like I said, it's come around for me because
that's their AOR record. That's their, you know, their music.
Well, I'm willing to live with that appellation of it. I think because I'm such a prog guy, because I'm
I'm a
such
published author, so you have to take my word for it.
yeah, because I'm such a synth head too. That's what's I've realized. Wow,
Yeah.
that's why I liked it a little bit more in high school because it's got the I forget the synth. It's a GX. Maybe someone can tell me GX1, maybe Yamaha, but it's got some great synthesizer sounds on it. It's different, but yeah, House of the Holy Rules
House of the
too.
Holy is a great fucking
It's
record.
amazing record.
That's a really
And two, except for being overplayed on the radio, you know. So
yeah.
I want to jump back to a couple of things, and how much time do you have? Do you have a little time?
Let's see what time it is.
You got.
I got plenty of time.
Okay, great, great. So getting back to a couple comments here. Sabine, okay, Sabine says good night. Sabine is a dear friend who tags in from Germany every
Ooh.
week. She's great. And so your dad's German. Was he from Germany?
My father was born in Dusseldorf.
There we go. Wow.
Yeah,
So do you speak any German?
yeah. 9.
9. Okay. So Sabine's great because she'll let me mispronounce German words on the air, and she corrects me. But she's also been she's great because she reports in. I met her because we all met her, my band and my other half, because she works at a great festival called the Zappanale.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Zappa, yeah. And but she's been reporting to us from the front about how vegetarianism and veganism is blowing up in Germany. I mean,
good.
restaurants and all these products and just incredible array of stuff, as it is really in globally with a lot of young people.
It's rough going to a German restaurant as a vegetarian because you're kind of screwed.
Now,
you're eating lots of
in America or in Germany? Because in Germany,
in America, I only spent like 2 hours in the Frankfurt airport.
Well, you know,
see Monty Python. So.
To that point, and we could have a long discussion on this, but almost every cuisine has been Americanized. I mean, Chinese food is the one that people know the most. I mean, they were like, okay, this is what they want, and there's like
a really great show on Dabble, I think, called Confucius Was a Foodie.
Oh,
that goes all over the country and talking to like serious like Chinese chefs and stuff, and how Chinese food was Americanized.
Oh, so Americanized
for 150 years. It's really good show.
Fascinating documentary we saw where there was a law against Chinese immigration, you know, 100 and some years ago, but there was a clause in there that if you were running either a food business or a shop, like you could get under the radar, and bingo, there we go, right?
Yeah.
So hundreds of thousands of Chinese were like, I'm a chef, and so all these restaurants opened up all around America, very, very long time ago. If you think about it, in terms of America's integration and race problems, there was Chinese restaurants everywhere, partly for that reason. And they very quickly made up like 10 things that Americans liked that we all know as the.
I think chop suey was one of them.
That's one of them. But to
Fortune
that
cookies,
point,
they never had those in China.
To that point, you know, now that I've eaten food in Mexico, in Japan, you know, in Turkey, in Israel, in Germany, you realize, wait a minute, we're getting like the weird Americanized version of everything, which usually means more meat.
Yeah.
And more. Talking about vegetarian artists for a second, because Joan Jett, of course, long veg and vegan. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that nexus there, because you've got so many people. Wendy O. Williams.
If I can refer to the official heavy metal book of lists that I just so happen to have set up to the Hail Satan 30 heavy metal vegans and vegetarians section.
Right.
I won't read every one, but I mean, Kirk Hammett from Metallica, Rick Allen, Phil Collins, and Viv Campbell from Def Leppard, Rob Zombie. Who else do I listen to on this list? Bill Ward and Geezer Butler from Sabbath. Dweezil, our common friend Dweezil.
That's right.
Steve Vai, and I just read something recently about Steve Vai going vegan, and his was like a total health thing. But he's on it for like 30 years. Ricky Rocket from Poison, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these people may have like backslid at some point.
But most of those I've seen recent interviews or things. Yeah.
I mean, I like to think that once you sort of hit that plateau, that you kind of keep with it. You know, I quit smoking and backslid a couple of times, but the last time it's like I haven't had a cigarette in years and years.
Yeah. No,
nor do I have any fucking desire to. So, and once I gave up meat, not a problem. I don't miss it.
likewise.
I don't miss it at all.
No, it's great, and what I like about that is, look, these folks are influential, and kids will buy the Flying V or the red Les Paul because of
Sure, yeah.
they'll buy a similar pair of boots or start wearing their hair a certain way. So hey, it's just human nature, and if for a change they're going like, hey, Ricky Rockett's vegetarian. Let me read about that.
Yeah.
So. That's
why PETA would get all the celebrities for their, their I'd rather go naked than wear fur bit, and giving up all sorts of meat and leather and all sorts of shit. Then one of their missteps may have been Ron Jeremy, but
Well, yes, someone had a question about that we can get to, but Russell Simmons and a bunch of the guys.
Yeah.
And Chrissy Hind.
Yeah.
Of course, Paul McCartney. So again, all of it adds up to, people. There's always the trolls, and it's like, you're not saying these are better people or we should live our lives like them, but just again, I can't get a better example than the Flying V one. If it's okay for a kid to say, well, let me look into a Flying V because my favorite, right? Similarly, so someone had a question there. Well, first off, let me before I go to the Ron Jeremy, can you hear this? Is this coming through?
Yes, I did hear.
Okay, because I will. I always forget how my audio settings. Have you seen this guy? I'm just going to put it on and get your reaction. Have you seen this guy?
No.
Oh yeah, he's vegan black metal chef.
Oh, I've heard of this guy. Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
He's screaming the lyrics. Chop the garlic, then you saute the tempeh.
That's great.
Drain the udon noodles, add sesame oil.
Yeah, I've heard him. I've never seen him. Praise Satan button on my bed. Yeah.
It's great, man. So
that's hilarious.
And it goes to the soy sauce.
Grate your garlic and ginger. Satan accepts these mushrooms to be your partner.
Oh, that's fucking
A frozen udon noodles into the boiling water. Let your green shit.
make the noodles suffer.
That's the best.
Sriracha, man. Sriracha's overrated.
There we have it. We won't play the whole thing.
That's fucking hilarious.
Right? And so he's got
that's funny as hell.
I don't know, a half dozen of them, and they're they're equally twisted.
That's funny as hell. And I gotta say, speaking about like the metal and all this, there's something in the book about like, metal bands fronted by animals, and I'm not like into elephants and circuses and shit, but as long as this is another thing where me and Peter sort of part ways.
Sure.
Animals can be ethically used for entertainment in movies and shit. I think it's best if they're ethically used in entertainment and movies and shit to teach people of, like animal rights sort of stuff. But
exactly. No, it's true. There's a
couple of bands, Hate Beak, which is a metal band that's the lead vocalist is a parrot.
Oh wow, Hate Beak.
Hate Beak.
Oh my god.
So much. The biggest word? And best of all, Caninus. One of the dogs sadly passed. It was a metal band, and the vocalists were two pit bulls.
Oh my God!
And their album was actually produced by Bumblefoot from Guns N' Roses.
I toured with him 2 summers ago. I wish
He's a hell of a nice guy.
Oh, he's amazing, man. And he
his wife's a sweetheart too.
Yes, she is. We met her a couple of times. He played guitar and sang for Asia. Actually, he just sang.
Did he really?
Yes.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, he's one of these guys who they can play with fucking anyone, you know. Which I sort of like. I sort of love and I sort of hate, you know.
I know.
There were two guys, or this one guy in particular, who I met and just kind of razzed one night when I was drunk. Steve Conte from the New York Dolls.
Oh yeah, right? Jersey guy.
Did you know him?
I've met him because
he went to high school in Matawan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A million years ago, because he knows all our friends. He knows Alan and
and
all those guys. Yeah.
And you know, one drunk night, I think Sylvain introduced me to him, and I'm like, "Oh, what's it like playing Johnny Thunders in the New York Dolls?" He's like, "Well, I'm not really playing Johnny Thunders in the New York Dolls." I'm like, "Yeah, but what's it like playing Johnny Thunders in the New York Dolls?" You know, I was like, you know, I kind of like razzed him a little bit more than I should have, you know.
Sure. No, that's and the Conti family, how talented, and rest in peace, Sylvain. You know.
No, absolutely. But Conti he's one of these guys. He's so fucking talented. He plays with he played with Simon and Garfunkel, and then he winds up, you know, in the New York Dolls. It's like, I wish that I could do something like that. You know, I wish that I could write all sorts of different like styles and shit and play in all these freaking bands. You know. That's why I always say, like, you musician guys, you got it all over fucking writers, you know?
Well, you know, it's a mixed bag. You know, the writers seem to have a quicker pathway to getting paid these days, but it's just numbers.
Show me that path, son. I'd like to walk that path for a while.
Well, yeah, right. You know, no, that's a great question, an endless question, and I think the talent. Like, you can't be really, really shitty, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong. And put out a couple of books. Unless you're paying for it all, because daddy has the money or something. But you can... The bar is so low now to create music that there's a lot of music on the bottom of the pool now.
Yeah. Well, I think that the lowest common denominator has always existed with, like, every art form. But I think that what was once the democratizing power of technology has just fucked everything up, you know?
Yeah.
Well,
it's good and bad, because on the other hand,
yeah,
you're able to put your own book out, which you wouldn't have 20 years
Which is true, you know? But on the other hand, like, everybody can fucking do it, to the point where the market is so saturated.
That's what
one of the banes of my existence that I go to still once in a while is Twitter. I fucking hate it. and every once in a while I gotta, like, vent, you know? So I'm venting today, and I'm like, okay, so at what point are newsletters, because everyone's got a fucking newsletter now. You can't go to a website without the pop-up like, oh, sign up for our newsletter. At what point are newsletters so saturated no one's going to get them anymore? The same way that blogs were. It's like, oh, go to my blog, you know?
Yes.
For a while, the average readership of a blog, one person, because there are so fucking many of them. So everyone who can do this, I'm a writer now. It's like, well, no, you're not a writer any more than me playing, you know, Remington Electric Razor on the mandolin makes me a musician.
No, you raise a great point, and to me, the first step is being aware of that. I mean, me doing this, you know, I have to say, I started doing this like a year ago. I started doing it pretty early on, and I was doing...
And a stellar job you're doing, by the way, I got to say.
Well, thank you. It's very kind. And I started doing stuff on COVID. I would come on and talk about immunity, and I would talk about plant-based diet. I talk about herbs for your immunity and your digestive system, all these things. And I was saying, based on what we knew then, they were already saying, and it's still consistent, the better your immune system is, the better you'll do with this. That's pretty axiomatic about almost anything. But I remember very early on getting on and talking about this, and then I started doing some streaming and some stuff. And then my interviews, and I tell you, and I'm not saying I'm a pioneer, of course not. Millions of people did interviews, but people like on my level who weren't doing it before, musicians and other artists. And now there's scores of musicians, other people who play, who are doing interview shows now.
Oh, everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone.
So, and I'm top level people, like not Paul Stanley, but someone on that level I saw the other day is doing one, and all these people. I know a guy who's who's a talent buyer. He's a promoter. He's doing interviews now. So you're right. There's a saturation point. I'm happy I get 50, 20, 30 people on a good day, and then a few hundred watch it later. That's what's cool. People later on. But you're right. We're in a filtering period. We're in a winnowing period where I think people are saying, I'm on too many email lists. What can I do? And
really, I mean, especially because like the whole newsletter thing, it's all data mining. They just want your fucking email. They don't give a shit if you ever read the stuff, And frankly, a lot of the stuff I've subscribed to like 3 or 4. The stuff they give you, it's not that great. I thought the Third Man Records newsletter would be a lot better than it is. It's just ads for their shit, Yeah,
that's bummer.
Yeah, it comes to a point where too many people are doing something to make it a viable means of communication.
Well, that gets into a Buckminster Fuller discussion, which I think we had, where you start saying like, why do we have work in 2021? Why do we have work? Why do we have if there's literally trillions of dollars in aggregate wealth? And what is wealth? Is it raw material? Is it the access to minerals and then to agriculture and then to food? Why are we're getting to that question again, and I think COVID has brought it up. And countries like Norway, who've done the kind of what do you call it, basic monthly income. These are interesting questions because they've run the numbers and they end up going, you know what? It's far less than prisons and crime and drug rehab and mental health. If everyone can just live and have basic level, if you want to do more and start a company and you want to start this and that and make millions, no problem. We are open market. But if you wanted to be an artist and wanted to just live in a small apartment with your cat and not be bothered, so to that point, we're all racing in this rat in this mouse wheel for stuff. I do it. In fact, I just put up my Patreon, which I always forget to remind people. Because I'm in this economic.
The public tea on Patreon.
Well, it's funny because I resisted Patreon for years.
No, yeah, I know. Yeah,
and we were talking about this.
I still have.
Because it felt like begging, and then I realized, no, I'm selling a service, and so I put my Patreon there, and people should check it out. I won't talk much about this, but at the $5 level, you get 2 performances and 2 workshops out of me per week. And believe me, I'm worth it. I do an acoustic show on Sundays. I do an electronic.
I've heard you play. You are worth it.
Thank you. I do an electronic show on Friday nights, and then on Saturday I do a synthesizer workshop tutorial where we're going through the history of synthesizers, how they work, what's an oscillator, what's a VCA, what's a filter, how do you use LFOs. So I'm just trying this new.
For $25,000, will you do this all in my apartment?
I will actually. Yes, I should have a 25K level. So that's all I'll say about that. Let's go back to some food and. Hey, Kimba Joy Thurick is here, who's a dear friend of mine. But I always say her name wrong. I think it's Thurich. But hi, Kimba. How are you? Kimba says, and Kimba's from New Jersey.
Oh.
And so we have some Jersey folks together in the house today. She says, yeah, rock and roll. She says, that's what opened my eyes. She's a musician. She's veg. She's an actor.
Cool.
I can in a million levels. She said an interview with Chrissy Hine when she was 13, and then the one when she was 18 with the Smiths. Meat is Murder sealed the deal. So great point. She's making the point, kind of what we were saying too, and many people say, and I've heard her say this, that it is valuable when you see, these artists that you look up to. It makes you explore it sometimes.
Absolutely. The problem that I just have, like I said, it's the torture pictures. They're the ones that shock me into it. So. Yeah. So maybe, some 14-year-old kid is going to see that and be like, oh, don't do that to the Lammy, which is what it's all about. It's not doing it to the Lammy. Don't do it to the Lammy and others.
And that wasn't meant.
For Bruce fans, that is.
Yeah, and that wasn't meant as a pushback to Peter. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm kind of.
Peter.
It's funny, though. For a while there, I was like, I should fucking send them a resume and try to get a job because I'm a pretty decent writer, and I come up with slogans really well.
I'll tell you something. You would have a better chance. I applied for a job at PETA.
Oh, yeah.
And working like some editorial sort of thing. You would have a better chance than I would.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Because one of their questions on their job application online is, are you a vegan?
Oh, okay.
And I was not able to honestly say yes, I'm a vegan because I'm just a
You're
vegetarian.
veg, right? Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But you, yeah.
And it's like, please explain. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
okay, I have done this. I wrote this article that, I forget the guy's name. He carried that issue of Penthouse Forum around with him for a month and was showing people. So I've
Sure.
done this, that, and the other for the company, but no, I'm vegetarian because I was a member of PETA and I saw this and blah, blah, blah. Didn't even hear back from him.
Right.
I was
Okay.
like, you can't even get a job there unless you're
Yeah.
a vegan.
See, that's
Which, I mean, I
that's
guess sort of it makes sense, but still.
it's a little weird. But it's funny. And I thought you were going to say because they're seeking to increase diversity, because that would be good too. Because I'm all for it. Yeah, I mean, I'm ready to say that. I need a job.
Yeah, increase diversity and hire vegetarians instead of just vegan.
I'm here to diversify your workplace. Well, not only dietary leaves, but just as a person of African descent, I can say to them, "Hey, you need."
See, I don't see color, so I don't even know.
You didn't even? Did you know I was black? Actually,
I heard some guys talking about it in Jersey. You were black. I didn't believe them. So.
But sometimes I'm ready to help if it's a company that's a little too white male. But
I'll be the vegetarian diversity hire.
The PETA thing's interesting though, and I often say I'm a beegan, like BEEGAN, because I do eat. I don't use honey. I'm drinking some tea right now, and once in a while I'm not against it, but I was hardcore vegan for many years, and then I realized the bee products are actually excellent for humans. Propolis, bee pollen,
Okay, yeah,
and it so happens that has a lot.
They're better when they're used by the bees that they're intended for. But
oh, absolutely, and that's where it gets.
I'm just tweaking.
No. Please do, and I've thought about the whole picture, and yeah. So I'm totally against like Golden Blossom, like supermarket honey, and that kind of. Yeah. They're horrible. They kill the bees seasonally, usually, they
I'm sure of it.
They feed them sugar water and all this stuff. I'm for sustainably run bee husbandry, and is it called wifery now? We should. We got we're looking.
Oh God.
Well, it's a valid discussion, but
it depends on what the bees' pronouns are.
There you go, and as long as we're covering everyone, then I'm happy. But bee caretaking is can be done in a positive, in organic kind of sustainable way. So once I started learning that, being in retail for 15 years, I started saying, there's bees should be embraced, and they should be. And then the other funny thing that I tweak some vegans with sometimes is honey is actually a plant product. It's just processed by bees. Think about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Isn't that? I mean,
true.
Just to start.
In the same way that grass is really a plant. That milk is really a.
Exactly right.
Because the grass is processed by a fucking cow.
Exactly. So it's not. It's not.
I do like that though. Vegans need to be tweaked.
Yeah. Thank you. It's not a great argument, but it's And
it's
then
funny as hell. It is.
And then I started getting into the. Tell me what you think of this. I started getting into the idea of, well, I read quite a few things about this. What did humans eat really when we were evolving, when we were coming up? And that's where it gets interesting, because it wasn't vegan, it wasn't vegetarian even, but it highly supports like a 98% plant-based diet, actually, because we don't have fangs, we don't have claws.
That's it. Everyone goes right to the digestive system. When they're like, "Oh, well, we're meant to eat meat because we can kill animals and because of our digestive system." Right?
But it's the opposite.
No, we don't have the teeth to fucking.
Yeah.
We don't have the things, the canines coming down, the fangs that were made to rend meat. Like a tiger and me do not have the same smile.
Yeah.
And there's a reason, because that's gonna rip your face off, and I just want to hug a bunny and have a fucking tofu burger.
But also the immune system, actually. Our immune system is a couple times the length of our body. It is puckered, and it goes around so it can push fiber through. It's got everyone knows the shape of the human intestines, and that's because it undulates and it pushes fibrous material through. Go look this up, folks, if you've never looked this up. You look at the digestive system of pure hunting carnivores, which you can clearly, you know what those are. Like the big cats you were just talking about.
Yeah.
And they have a smooth, much shorter intestine.
Yeah.
Their blood chemistry and their pH of their blood, their digestion, their saliva. You start, and I know there's someone rolling their eyes going, "Well, we're omnivores." Okay, but that's because of our brains. That's because
We're omnivores because there's money fucking in it. There's
Well,
money
there's-
in it. The
but
dairy
I think-
industry.
Yeah.
My two things with not being totally fucking vegan is like eggs and cheese, because you can't get fucking away from them, right?
just being in eating out in restaurants and things.
Yeah, I mean, like if I'm going to go to someone's wedding and the wedding cake's going to come, I'm not going to be like, well, if there's eggs in that cake, I'm not that big a
Sure.
fucking Nazi about it,
Sure.
But when it comes down to things like that, you can't be a total fucking vegan in every sense of the word.
No,
You're
it's
going to be eating, like if you take asprin, you're going to be eating horse hooves at
That-
some
yeah.
point. There are
No, you-
vegan aspirins. Bayer
it-
makes actually a vegan aspirin.
it's I've been there and I've been that person at the wedding and and they knew ahead of time we were coming. But no, you raised a great point, and I ate eggs for about 3 or 4 years. About 3 years ago I stopped, and farm raised organic, and I
They kill them. They kill them nicely and they torture them politely.
well there
Is what
you,
field, that's
No,
what
it's
all
true.
that shit means. Really.
you can get non-fertilized eggs. You can get eggs that have a straight line of just coming out of the chicken, and you get it. I have a guest on here in a couple of weeks, and it's a woman who runs a chicken sanctuary, and I can't wait to hear some of the things she talks about, because very knowledgeable about hens and what they go through. And what I didn't know is apparently hens, there's some pain involved that's quite dramatic, because they've been encouraged to produce that many more eggs.
Oh yeah. No, obviously.
Yeah,
And,
but
that's what I have the problem with. It's like we don't have to eat that shit, and you don't have to do that to these birds.
So do you buy eggs? Do you buy like organic or free range?
I gave up buying eggs 3-4 months ago, because it was another sort of thing where like I'd have brunch with someone and then it'd be like, oh, I want eggs or whatever, and I'm just sitting around thinking like, okay, how much further can I torture myself and make my life so much more difficult to live? And I'm like, well, I'm going to cut out eggs this time.
That was the reason.
Yeah.
Not
It's not
self-flagellation.
because I love animals. It's because I hate myself.
There you
That I'm doing this whole thing. I want my life to be as difficult as possible. And I'm like, well, then I'm just going to stop picking up a dozen eggs when I go to the store. And I did, and I don't really I don't miss it.
That's great.
So that's one less thing that I got to, deal with, and one less bit of guilt. I mean, I don't do, of all of it, honey is like the lowest on my list, because there's so little that has honey in it anyway, really.
It's
but like
hard. Yeah.
leather, silk, wool, all that shit, I don't wear it. No animal products at all do I eat aside from cheese,
Sure.
and
And
stuff that you can't get away from, like like I said, like aspirin and shit like that.
sure.
I'm not gonna go to a place and not sit on a leather chair.
Well, yeah. Well, that
you know?
to me, it's consumption. If you're consuming it,
Yeah.
because realistically, and I've had this discussion again for many years in my retail world. You wouldn't buy magazines or go to a movie because there's gelatin in film.
Yeah.
There's
Absolutely.
gelatin used to
Yeah.
produce cars. It really gets to. So for me, a long time ago, I was like, you know what? I can control what I'm eating, and we'll leave it at that. And even this fucking vaccine, which I hate that I have to be a part of, but we're in a burning.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that.
But there's animal product in some of them. Glad I said that I hate the idea, or
Have you been vaccinated?
I have not.
Or are
And
you going to be?
I'm not happy about it, but yeah, I'm going
That's
to.
exactly my thing. And I figured that there was probably some animal product in it, because they have to make use of every scrap of an animal that they grind up in a fucking, into
I think
whatever
I think one of them doesn't. I forget. People can look this up. One of them, Moderna or Pfizer.
I'll look it up, because that's
One of
the
them
one
does-
that I would want to get. But I'm not pleased with
But it's
having to be forced to get this.
Well,
You know?
I think one of them has no animal ingredients, but it still goes into the pool of animal testing, and then it gets cloudy on.
Like they use a spatula to turn the burgers that they used to turn my tofu burgers. I can handle that.
And what we could say is it's at least moved in that direction of because this one does at least Yeah, all three of them. No, the J&J uses a viral. It uses an adenovirus. But the other three are quite unique because they're the first vaccines in 225 years that don't use viral material, right?
Really?
Oh, yeah. That's one of the things. And it's funny because that's openly said in the press and stuff, but it's kind of on paragraph 2, and people kind of shy over it. But the quick picture, and I urge people to go read about this, I spent several months in the virus rabbit hole last year, and I did streams about it. Just all kinds of things. This virus existing in bat populations, blah blah blah. Could it be from a lab? Which I think there's a chance, not in a conspiracy way that they Dr. Evil they snuck it out, but they have a lab where they're testing viruses in animals and seeing what happens. That's part of science. And rats get in because rodents get into plants, and that rat might be bitten by an animal that's in there, or they might eat some excrement from a bat, and then so things happen, and then that rat goes to a wet market half a kilometer away, and people got to realize that shit is porous and viruses. So without getting into that discussion, though, focusing on the vaccines, please look this up, folks. But I forget the guy's name. But the gentleman who invented the smallpox vaccine, 1796, and realized that if you had a little bit of infection, you would generate immunity. And that's basically how vaccines work for 225 years. Whether it's mumps, malaria, polio vaccine, all of these things. This is the first one, the Moderna, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca, that have a mRNA, which is a type of synthetic RNA that sends instructions to your cells to make a spike protein. Very simple, actually, and simple and complicated. I couldn't make one, but that's what it's doing. And then your cells make that spike protein. Your immune system says, "What's this?" and generates immunity for a spike protein, and it's working. So then you actually encounter COVID, which is a spike protein laden virus, and your body goes, "Oh, cool! I know what to do with spike proteins." And so that's how it's working so far.
That's what I heard is the part of COVID that's mutating so much is the spike protein.
This is where we have to get to honesty, and I love Anthony Fauci, and I love science, and Fauci, you lived in New York, we know him from the Village Voice in the 80s and 90s because he was one of the leading HIV doctors, right?
Is that fucking right? Really?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Sure, and
no shit.
Yeah, and the voice. So you've probably read them, but you forget the name. But the voice was really leading on a lot of stuff about HIV in the late. And so his name came up, and 10 other doctors. But the point is, when you listen to them, they are saying, "Look, we don't know how long this is the solution. We cannot tell you if we're going to have to give a different vaccine every year. We cannot tell you if the efficacy of this thing is going to plunge in October because the variants have gone in a direction we don't foresee."
People had better accept it's not going to be over anytime soon.
I just want people to admit that there's a question mark. That's all. I'm fine. I'm a math guy. I have a computer science degree. I'm a math guy. I'm a combinatorics and a statistics guy. I want to assign probability numbers to things. And I just want people to just say, hey, and this comes back to your question. Yes, okay, I'll do it. I'll do the vaccine because it is showing that it's right now slowing infection. It's when people are exposed, they're not getting the symptoms, and the people that do get the symptoms, it's chopping the deaths way down. This is factual. We're seeing it in Israel, who has the highest percentage of citizens. We're seeing it in so many countries that you can't say it's just a conspiracy. Having said that, all I want to ask the people who are having a party over the vaccines is to be careful here. You do not know that this is just, yay, we're back. It's America, Disneyland. This fucking virus is zoonotic.
Yeah.
It comes from non-human species. And I think a lot of y'all are not biting down on how rare that is. That's not normal.
I think a lot of what people don't understand too is that viruses, everyone thinks like, oh, it's a germ. Viruses they're like little, you can't see them, but they're little tiny living things. We had this discussion the other day. They're little tiny living things. And the basic thing that a little tiny living thing wants to do is it wants to survive. And that's why viruses mutate. It's because when this one vaccine comes and says like, okay, we're going to stomp you out now, it's like, well, I'm going to change this and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to be even stronger. So you're going to have to come up with another vaccine.
Sure.
And then they're going to come up with another vaccine and it's going to be like, I'm going to be even bigger now and I'm going to be even stronger. And it's going to mutate because it wants to live.
Potentially. And to be clear and fair on that, we have conquered things like polio and smallpox.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
no, absolutely. But also, I mean, I think that when it gets to the point where the thing wants to live like so badly,
yes,
we haven't killed the cold.
We have it. We have it. But we have killed.
And I think it's gonna get to a point where we're just gonna have to fucking live with it. We're gonna be wearing masks for a long motherfucking time.
It's
I think.
I'm with you. All I want people to do is picture it like a deck of cards. You don't know what card we're going to pull 5 years from now. The card may say masks forever. Pull a card. The card may say, hey, you know what? It mutated in a way that some viruses did where it became non-viable and it actually died off. The Black Death, for instance, we didn't have vaccines then, but the Black Death, which went on for years, is still with us. Still is that virus. It only kills, I think, 60 or 80 people a year on the whole planet. But again,
wait till they go to spring break. Wait till those 60 or 80 people with bubonic plague go to spring break.
All I want to get people to do
is be all over the place.
I just want people to have what I call the little drop of uncertainty. And so this is why we're here talking about food and nutrition and diet. Is that so take care of the shit you could be certain of. Eating a better diet, building your immune system, doing things like that. Let me jump back to that on the eggs thing. Have you had this stuff called Just Egg? Have you had that?
Which one is that?
So
I've tried a couple. I haven't been too incredibly impressed with any of them.
I would say likewise. Going back to like. There was a stuff called tofu scrambler in the It was okay.
If I remember, that tofu scrambler stuff was just like the spices and the yellow shit that made it look like scrambled eggs. But all you need is like the tofu. And I realized a couple of months ago, if I'm making like potatoes in the morning and like hash or whatever, and I want to put some nutritional eggs in it, if I just put in like a block of firm tofu and scramble that up, I don't give a shit that it doesn't look like an egg.
That's it.
That it doesn't taste like an egg. I just want to fucking eat it and get on with my day.
Yeah.
It's like that's my problem with Impossible burgers, which I had just yesterday.
Okay.
I got some of that. Aside from the fact it's a little bit pricey because their research and development took so long and cost so much, they have to make their money back. But it's like, I don't need my fake burger to fucking bleed. I don't give a shit if it looks like pink on the inside.
No, they did.
Morningstar Farms is actually better, I think, than Impossible Burger. Impossible Burger is a really good replication of ground beef in a burger. It's insanely good. And it actually, the first time I cooked it myself, it sort of made me sick because it was like, that smells like fucking burning meat,
No,
but I don't need it to fucking bleed. I don't need it to look rare.
I got you. I'm
with
with you.
cake hole and fucking get in my stomach.
The only thing I don't disagree. The only thing I add to that is, again, having been in this industry 30 years ago and for 15 years, I've been out for 15 years. The only thing I'll add is that once you get into ROI, return on investment, and you get marketing numbers and you get into all this, which you know all about this. But I'll just throw this out there. There's one little thing to think about. I don't want it to be like so meaty that it's red inside. I'm with you. 100%. But I also, and I've also backed off a little and I said, well, you know what? If some mainstream family in Nebraska is going to buy,
that's their market,
because their doctor has said to the husband and the wife, you're going to die. Within you're 47. You've already had 2 heart attacks. These are real stories. You have 2 heart attacks. You have 89% blockage,
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
overweight, your son has diabetes, everyone in the family is unhealthy. You need to start eating more vegetables, more fruit, exercise, the whole list. I'm not saying, eat an Impossible Burger, but in that mix is less saturated fat, get off the red meat, stop, and they might be saying to the woman, your estrogen and your estradiol and progesterone are through the roof. You got to get off of these cow hormones that you're eating. You might not find out from the doctor, but so that's my whole thing. If there's now these products that market of people, which is, tens of millions.
Yeah.
If it means they're going to start buying this stuff, which they are.
Yeah.
You read the trades, that's who's buying it. Mainstream America. These chicken nuggets and these sausages and these. There's always that argument on the fringe of vegetarianism, and the trolls always say, I think nonsensically, how come you want to eat something that looks like a sausage if you're vegetarian? I don't know why I became jerky guy from Long Island, but maybe there's something to that. But
my answer to those people is always because, just to interrupt you real quick.
No,
my
please.
answer to that is always because it's part of the shared communal experience of eating together that goes back to like cavemen, 10,000 years ago. Long after the dinosaurs died off, because you want to be part of a clan.
That's it.
And if you go to a barbecue,
and that's with a C, folks.
Yeah. And if you go to a barbecue and you are like the weird vegetarian who's going to have the salad, or you can have like a fucking thing that looks like a fucking burger, but it's not made out of a dead cow. You want the thing that looks like a burger and is not made out of a dead cow because you want to be like other people. You want to share that.
It's okay.
And I think that's why Impossible's market really is. I always call them like, the not quite vegetarian meat eaters who are like the not quite Republican libertarians.
Absolutely.
Libertarians just don't want to admit that they're Republicans. And there were some people who like would become vegetarians, but I need a burger. It's got to look like this. It's got to squeal when I eat it. It's like, okay, this is for you.
I'm fine.
And,
because at the end of the day, as we're both concerned with, the animals come out ahead. Sustainable agriculture comes out ahead. They still got to keep working on that with the pack and things like that and local. No, all great points, my friend, that I agree with. Well, let me show you this product. And so having said that, a lot of the egg substitutes were just kind of This, I've talked about this on the show many times. Most people know what I'm going to show here. This stuff is incredible. Have you
I've never seen that.
Man, you've never heard me rave about stuff. I'm gonna rave, bro. You can do just like they have in there, a little egg sandwich, a scrambled egg.
Oh wow!
We do frittatas, we do omelets, and it's so clean. It's mung bean protein, and what turns out is that the mung beans have a protein, a chemical. Consistency, much like egg. Once they process it, of course, they steam them and macerate them and stuff. But the point is, as they show in this picture, here's where it's starting. A fucking field. Plants can grow. We can sustainably grow these things. We can rotate crops. We gotta wake up, folks. If you're using a million hectares or a million acres for cattle food, right? To grow corn or soy or whatever, to grow fucking cows. It doesn't work. We're at the end of that game. And so, so what I'd love here is that, okay, this is a big company, so you're right back in the problem of they're shipping it around and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But if we can get, and we already are starting to have competing companies, but if we can get 10,000 companies around planet Earth making plant-based stuff so that local people have it, so it's not flying around, it's not stuck in the Suez Canal. But I'm telling you, bro, go try some of this stuff.
Yeah, I will.
It comes in a little bottle like that. I wish it came in like a half gallon at least. But you pour it into some hot oil or bake it in muffin cups or something. Mm. The texture, you would send it back to the kitchen. If you're in a place and sorry, they put egg in my food.
Yeah. I almost did that with Impossible Burger the first time.
Yeah. So the final thing I'll say about this is that a chain in China is now using this, a 500 location chain in China. and they're using it. And that says so many things, because it says that here's a culture that uses a lot of egg in a lot of dishes, right?
Yeah.
And here's a situation where, when you've got, that's a tough market. If you've got people who traditionally are using egg and they're saying, hey, this is cool, I want to have this. Yeah, it tells you that it's right on. Some interesting stuff happening in Asia. Did you know that Starbucks in Asia are doing Beyond Pork in their morning stuff? Did you know that?
No, I did not. I've had the Beyond Sausage.
How was it?
It's great. Yeah, really, really great.
Yeah, here, I'll just put this.
Dunkin' Donuts, they have it on their morning menu.
That's great. No,
it's really good.
Check that out, huh? Look, China's major. That's so dramatic, folks, because you're talking the Chinese cuisine here, folks, where the egg has a special place, and if folks are going to support it with their what's the money there? I don't know, but if they're going to support it with their money, that says something. Tell us a little bit about your favorite cuisines, Eric. What are you? Are you a Thai guy? Are you Mexican? Are you Chinese? What do you like?
A lot of Italian.
Okay.
I like a lot of Italian because I like a lot of pasta, and I make really good sauce.
Okay.
In terms of stuff that I cook, probably Italian. Some Mexican sort of stuff. I'm not that good like making Chinese food or anything like that because I don't have like the right equipment. But yeah, basically Italian.
Okay, great. Okay, and then when you go out to eat, so that's great. You cook a lot, which you said before, like Thai, Mediterranean. I mean,
I'll go out and eat just about anything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is
I
there
like food from all over?
Awesome. Is there one cuisine or one or two or whatever that brought you in, that made it easier to be vegetarian? That you back in the day, is there something?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really, because I mean, I'm not that specific about any sort of brand, any sort of cuisine that I eat. But it was basically just because meat was so prevalent in everything.
Right.
It's like, well, I can't have meatballs in my spaghetti, and I can't have, chicken in my, chop suey and shit. So it's basically just that was the component. As soon as that split, then I was good with basically everything.
Right, and finding replacements or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Because for me, Middle Eastern was like a early discovery, and I was like, wow. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Especially going into New York City, as young teenagers, and that's the beauty of New York. You can falafel, tahini, with different things. I want to see. Okay, so we'll wrap up in a few minutes. This has been great, man. Thank you for.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed this.
And some great audience. Let's see if there's any. Oh, here's Anthony is on the YouTube. Anthony says, "Oh, okay." Anthony's talking about there's nothing certain but death and taxes. He's referring to what we were saying. Anthony's my dear friend who is the brain, the founder, the genius behind Make Weird Music, which is, we've talked about that, the website and the YouTube channel that I do interviews for. But we have some great discussions, and he's concurring with what we said. You can't be certain, folks. It's a fucking deck of cards, and you're going to get a couple that you didn't want. So he said very wisely, there's nothing certain but death and taxes, right? And he also says, I think it'll be more like the flu. We'll learn to live with it. The flu is also a deadly virus for some populations. Yeah, for many populations.
And I've never gotten a flu shot either.
I've never got one. Yeah, and I'm fine if people get it, but I have to defer to that I don't get it. And when I get it, and this is the 1/1,000,000th of a milligram of animal product I'll take every few years. I take that stuff, oscillococcinum. You ever take that?
I've heard of it.
Unbelievable, man. I mean, I would be a skeptic early on with that stuff. Homeopathy, but it's great. It works. At the first sign of the flu, I've taken that for, over the course of 20 years, like 7-8 times, because I stay really healthy. But it works fantastically. So Anthony then says, okay, the vaccine will probably reduce the impact significantly. Yes, it is, absolutely. My wife gets this stuff free in the mail. Oh, wait a minute. You're saying your cousin works for Just Egg, Anthony? Call me, babe. let's 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 set up a pipeline here. Um, no, it's good stuff. But no, I agree with all that. We should have a little more randomness in our thing. So let's see if there's any other comments here. Kevin Ritchie, evolution has altered our lineage through hit minutes. Yes, and to Eric's point about the virus is evolving, I'm sure he knows this. To your point, Eric knows that, of course, humans are evolving too, just at a way slower rate. That's the thing. Just like fruit flies, which are way more complicated than viruses, fruit flies, I remember studying in biology in college. I forget how many days, but fruit flies fucking evolved like crazy. So these viruses, the thing about this one, just to jump back to that for a second, and I want people should read about this. I'm not just saying this shit. I don't say any of this shit without having the science from articles that I read from Nature, New England Journal of Medicine, National Geographic, and any reputable, news gathering. But this virus, however it actually made the jump to humans, isn't really that important. We know it would. This virus has been in bats.
Yeah.
And what we need to acknowledge also, bats are the oldest mammal species, I think on the order of 60, 70 million years old. Incredible. Bats are amazing to read about.
Yeah.
If people, and there's, I forget how many, I'm going to say on the order of 12 or 1,500 species of bats on Earth. They're really incredible. And they have one of the most robust immune systems on planet Earth. You're talking sharks, bats. Biologists argue about a couple other ones, but they count them on one hand, and they kind of go, well,
yeah.
So bats are way up there. So put that in your brain. This fucking virus has lived in bats. It's not playing, man.
It's the definition of irony, kind of,
I mean, that's the gym for viruses right there. That's your workout. If you get into a bat and you come back out, your shit is... and that's
serious.
So yes, vaccines are squeezing the numbers down. Yes, science, and we've beaten things before with vaccines. I'm all for it. I'm team vaccine in a limited way. This mRNA, it's science. I've talked to people I know in medical field who've brought me off the edge greatly on the mRNA. One friend has explained to me they've actually been using technology for several years now, and they've got success with individualized doses for sickle cell, for instance, and for other specialized. Yes. So mRNA, mRNA itself is at least a decade or 15 years of really good science. They know what they're doing there, and it's the Bill Gates whack jobs and the microchips. Holy shit, man! Because if they would only look it up, they'd see that it's used, and in fact, they're starting to look at it right now for malaria, which is still a massive killer. Yeah, and they think, okay, this mRNA thing, and now that we've ramped up a whole new way of quickly making vaccines, we might be able to take a shot at malaria. So I'm on board with all that. Again, I keep saying, I just want people to keep remembering, nature bats last.
Yeah.
You don't know that this solves it all. So anyway, enough on that. So let's go back to any questions here. Lab-grown muscle tissue. That's a great question for you, Eric. What's your thought? Have you heard about this? Lab-grown meat now. It's big in Israel and Singapore where it's legal. You know about this? Grown in a pizza?
I figured that it was coming. I didn't hear that they had already had it. And I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm a little bit torn. Like, if I could eat a burger that's actual real meat, but that didn't come from having to kill a cow.
Sure. What's the...
I don't know. Because the way that I think about it now, it's like, I don't need it.
I know. I wouldn't eat it, but it's okay. So
because I've already got like so many alternatives that will bleed anyway. So
no, it's true.
But again, like it's the same sort of thing. If that's going to keep if that's going to get someone on board with not killing animals, like okay, you get your pound of flesh, no pun intended, but nothing had to die for it. Have at it. Then I would be for it. Yeah.
Yes,
I think I've seen some things online where people tasted it and they were sort of like, it's the texture is, they don't have the texture down yet, and the flavor. I think it was chicken that I saw that they were synthesizing.
No, we're on the same page, as is just about always the case. You
Yeah,
know,
sure.
I agree. If my goal is shutting these factories down or reducing them to almost nothing. My goal is, if you are going to eat meat, it's coming from a local place. It's coming from a farm 20 miles from your house. I don't like it, but at least now we're not creating these hog lagoons. We're not destroying massive swaths of the rainforest, all these things. I want to close out with the fish thing. Let me just keep seeing if there's any other key questions here. Edward Jenner, thank you, Kevin Rich. I couldn't remember his name. That's the guy, smallpox virus in the 1796.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
Really fascinating. Look him up. And real quick, what he observed was the cow maids, which is the term they used, the women that were milking the cows, and horrible smallpox outbreak, which, by the way, we've had on Earth a number of times.
Yeah.
And they surmise that some of these Egyptian plagues were smallpox when they look at the descriptions of the physical marks that you read about, and it could be smallpox. And also, they've looked at some genetic material, because we have mummified people, so you actually you can do all kinds of chemistry. So smallpox has gone on and on and on. And Edward Jenner noticed, it's ravishing this town. Ravaging? It's destroying our city, our town here in England. But the cow maids are not getting it at the same rate. What's going on? And he discovered that they were being exposed to viral material from cowpox, which is a similar type of. And he just thought it through. He's like, if I gave that to someone, would it help them? And the first vaccines were literally a scratch in your skin, nick your skin, and put a little bit of the shit right on there, and it worked. I'm compacting months and months of experimentation into it. But the idea that you can take a tiny bit of stuff and make something happen, which parenthetically is why people who are anti-homeopathy, I'd like you to rethink it, because the attack on homeopathy is, how could a tiny amount of stuff do anything? Well, that vaccines does that.
Yeah.
Or did you ever see how much acid is actually on a piece of paper that makes you trip for 12 hours? So, So Aaron Price says he had some great soy bear jerky. Yeah, there's some great jerkies out there. Aaron, I love the mushroom jerky, which you can get at the West Side. Sharon says, is it real egg? No, the Just Egg is made from mung bean protein, and it's fantastic. So the J&J vaccine, I don't know. I'm in the midst of reading a great article right now on all 4 vaccines, and I would highly recommend reading it. I'll put that in the chat. The J&J one has an adenovirus in it, which is a different thing, but yeah. So sticking on the food topic to just close out, Eric, have you seen or know anything about this new Seaspiracy, this documentary about how we are destroying the fish?
You gave me my assignment to watch that, and for several different reasons. One being that I don't have very good access to Netflix and all that. But again, it's another thing where I don't need to see it, because I'm already sold. I'm not their audience with that. I'm not their target audience. Everyone else who is wrong is their target audience.
No, that's a great point. Yeah. So again, it's something we've both known about since we were teenagers, right? The fucking overfishing, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's cruel and fucking stupid and obnoxious.
Yeah.
And I've always hated it.
No, it's I want to watch it because there's some new info, and because of me doing this, I try to stay up with the news and stuff. But the fact that people are still confused about this, I've been reading about this since my teens, right? Discover, Omni magazine, things like that. We're talking in the 80s of saying, wow, we're overfishing this species or that species.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating to me about humans in the big picture is that the denial factor, that we just go, well, I think that'll go away if I don't read any more about it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's
And just that they don't care.
yeah.
You know, if every Christian who ever read the Bible and got to the part where it said "Thou shalt not kill" took it seriously, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
No, you're right, and consistency in all the religions
Yeah.
is an important thing. No, that's a great point. I wanted a couple of random things to double back. You brought up Steve Vai before, who I'm a huge fan, and did you know? And he's been vegetarian for many years, vegan part of that time. But did you know he's well known in his area, his neighborhood? He's a beekeeper. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yes, if
Did
you
not
go to
know
his
that.
website, so he's been an avid beekeeper for 35 years or something, and
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't know that.
and like serious, like beehives in his big backyard, and he pictures on his website with he's got the whole suit on and everything. Yeah, and he's a wonderful guy though. I've met him a bunch of times, and I'm a huge fan on spiritual levels. He's a brilliant man, and has a lot to say outside of music about reality and
Yeah, I read his a couple of his things about veganism, and yeah, he does.
spot on. So on top of that, this is great that you didn't know this. On top of that, if people in his neighborhood, if there's a beehive, he'll come get it.
Oh, cool.
He's like certified by the local town.
He's got his bee license.
He's a pro, and he goes into schools. And this is where it really he's such a great guy because it's all about giving back, which is the only reason I'd want to write a book. It's the reason I do this. You give back, and he goes into schools, high school, grade school, and he talks to kids about how bees are important. Why do we have bees?
Yeah.
They're pollinating our whole ecosystem. We must protect bees. So he's out there getting that info. And then he also does fundraising with his touring and stuff for kids to get instruments and to learn music.
Oh,
So,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, man, just what a
That's true. Without bees, we die. It's as simple as that.
you know,
The last Blondie album was called Pollinator.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And Debbie wanted to, why did you call it Pollinator? And she said, without bees, we die.
That's it.
It's
Do
pretty
you
simple.
know what other species pollinates? There's a
Humans.
couple birds and stuff.
Um,
You could probably make that argument. Yeah, we definitely move
no, I don't.
plant seeds and material around the planet.
Yeah. Pistil and
Bats.
stamen.
Bats.
Oh, real? Oh, that's right. Yeah, they do.
They pollinate at night, and
Yeah.
one of my favorite things they pollinate, which I'll probably enjoy some in a little bit. One of my favorite plant-based things, they pollinate the agave plant, which is tequila and mezcal,
Yeah.
and agave, the sweetener. So we have that. Man, just a beautiful chat with you. Let's see.
Yeah.
We've covered, ladies and gentlemen, many of you have been in and out during this chat, but it's Eric Danville. He's an author. He's an editor. He's a musicologist. He's just one of my favorite human beings because I've known him for the
40 years.
bulk of my life now. 40
years.
43 years this year.
Yeah.
And he's got a new book coming out, as he said, about Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, it's going to be coming out sometime around October, November, I think.
October,
After I
November.
get it done.
You can go on wherever, Amazon or wherever you like to buy books, and you can find his book, The Complete Linda Lovelace.
Yep.
And a friend of mine asked earlier. Aaron said, "Wait, she's complete." Very nice, but he's got that, and he's got the heavy metal, the official, mind you,
It's official.
heavy metal book of lists.
Yeah.
Which is there. Now, how can people find out, Eric? Because I saw your Instagram, but not many posts on it. It's just at Eric Danville. Is that the best?
Instagram, I don't really do. Twitter right now is probably the best one, and that's at Eric Danville as well.
Sure. That's also
I'm building everything up to the rollout of. Does anybody remember Laughter.net, which I
okay.
I
Okay.
have.
So it's okay.
There's
Is
nothing there yet,
everybody-
but the Twitter thing is probably the best way.
Okay. So I'll point people to that, and
Yeah.
and of course when you you know what, when the book's out, come back on the show. Because
Yeah,
that'd be
definitely,
cool. And,
absolutely.
But I love that we covered. I love to always ask people, why'd you go vegetarian? What happened? Like, what? And
Because I like the animals.
yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful thing. And we talked about some foods and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put your Instagram up here anyway, because then I'm gonna bug you to put more stuff on it.
There's only one
Right.
picture up there. One piece of Led Zeppelin graffiti.
Yeah, I saw that because I like Instagram better. I try to stay off Facebook, man.
Well, Facebook is just a fucking nightmare anyway. You know,
I
I gotta wean myself off of Twitter because that's a shithole too. But
yeah, Twitter at least is a little more controllable. Like you can filter the field a little bit more.
yeah, and it's shorter. It's only a couple of words instead of like.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
having to be edited, and I also love that the nature of how it works, the trending that you can just quickly go and go.
Yeah.
Oh, let me read that. Out of there. Facebook is just.
Oh, Facebook's a fucking nightmare.
It's nightmare. So I'm putting your Twitter up there. People, please follow Eric, and in fact, the more of you that follow him, the more maybe he'll post some cool stuff. And but he's and so I'm not even gonna. You're on Facebook, but people shouldn't even bother there. Right?
No, I gave up Facebook years ago.
Yeah. So, well, hey man, punk rock DIY. Here we are, and let's do this again.
Absolutely. I had a great time. It's very nice to reconnect with you in so many ways that I have over the past couple of years. Seeing you in person and running into you at odd times and doing this. I had a great time.
I love one last anecdote for people. I love. Well, most recent time I saw you in 3D was Adrian Ballou concert, right?
Yeah.
You came to that, and so I put Eric on the guest list, and the Iridium is a pain in the ass because you have to make sure you save a seat and everything. So anyway, he shows up, and I guess you had showed up and asked your name, and the young woman. Tell us the story. She saw your tattoos. You saw her tattoos. How did you? Let me tell the punchline.
Yeah, I forget what happened with her. I remember that the one thing I remember is they sat me down at the table with a couple of your other like music friends, I think, or some more music industry people.
Yeah.
And then everything was supposed to be comped that night, and they come over and they give us a bill for $175. I was like, wait a sec. I did not sign on for this. I forget what something happened with that girl. I forget what.
Well, you came downstairs and we took care of a bunch of girls and stuff, and then but you had a quick conversation with her either because you were wearing a pin or she was wearing a pin. So anyway, I'm talking to her later on and checking on my guests and stuff, and she goes, oh yeah, and I met your friend Eric. He's great. I'm a big metal fan, and we were talking about my T-shirt or something. I said, well, do you know he wrote a book, the official? And she was like, what are you talking about? And I said, yeah, he wrote the official heavy metal book list. And she flipped out. I then told you that. I said,
did I bring her a copy of it?
And the next day, you very kindly came down with a signed copy.
Yeah.
Just
I'm like that.
Oh, and she freaked. She was just like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
Because she had in the 24 hours looked it up and kind of, "Oh my god, that's the guy I was talking to."
I saw him. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she was cool. Yeah. I enjoyed talking to her.
So we'll end on that note of people go out kind, go do do a favor to someone. Oh my god, what an honor! Gary Fonseca was here to the bitter end.
Oh. Hey, Gary, what's going on?
Thank you, Gary. Gary, see what you've done? You were part of this because one of the first albums Eric turned me on to, he said, there's 3 or 4 of them, and he said, just go listen to this. And it was a very strange record, and it had a really strange album cover. It was like a streetscape, like a New York streetscape, it looked like. Was it New York City? Anyway, some city. And I was like, this is fucked up. But it had a spaceship that was a pyramid on it.
Oh, yeah.
I said, well, what the fuck record is this? And he said, just take it home and listen to this. And I put this record on. And I just, it changed my life because
that's a great album.
I'm still one of the biggest Todd Rundgren fans in the world. But this is the gentleman right here, folks. I put that album on. Brother John saw visions of God, but they took him aside for acting too odd. And the priest shut it off with his hand. The crowd shut it off with his hand. The priest said, "Have mercy, let's burn him instead."
Todd Rundgren, $100.
Oh my God, it's true. but the other funny music thing was I was into the Clash, because
Yeah.
79 and the Clash London Calling, and I was chuffed. I was like, oh yeah, the Clash. I got my Clash button, and I'm like, yeah, London Calling. and you just came in with that smirk. You were like, dude, listen to this. And it was the first Clash album.
Oh yeah.
I had, I was 14. I didn't know, and that shit broke my jaw. Man,
It's a great album. I think I might have actually gotten the import at Gary's store.
So thank you, Gary. That's what led me down.
Yeah.
Because we would go to Gary Fonseca's record store. He had all this shit, and he had it used. So you could afford it when your job was just cutting lawns. and so, Gary, we close on that. Just pure love for you, bro. You were a big brother. You were just a kind, amazing spirit. And the importance of music, it's my whole career. It's my life.
Yeah.
And it's part of Eric's career and his life. And you, dude, thank you, man. Really.
Absolutely.
Because I think back, I flip through my album and I find shit and I go, this motherfucker had this album? Like now I'm older, I know this was impossible to find. How did he know? So we close on that note. Eric, thank you, man. We'll see you. People, thanks for being here. See you next Monday. And, be kind to each other.
Yes, absolutely. Be kind to animals too. And Andre, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was a great time.
Absolutely, bro. See you soon.
Okay.